On a freezing December night in Miami, Lena Hart sat abandoned on cathedral steps in a $15,000 wedding gown, jilted, humiliated, and completely alone. 2 hours earlier, she'd walked in on her fiancé Victor Torano in bed with her own sister. Now her accounts were frozen, her family had turned their backs, and she had nowhere to go. That's when a black Mercedes pulled up and a man stepped out. Damian Crowe, the most dangerous crime boss in Miami, Victor's deadliest rival. He didn't mock her. He didn't gloat. Instead, he offered his hand and said 5 words that changed everything. You don't belong out here. If you want to see how a betrayed bride becomes the queen of Miami's underworld, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Lena's story travels across the world. The December wind cut through Miami like a blade, sharp and merciless, despite the city's subtropical reputation. It whipped off Biscayne Bay with a cruelty that seemed personal, especially tonight, especially for Lena Hart, who sat alone on the limestone steps of St. Mary's Cathedral wearing a wedding dress that weighed more than her future. The gown was magnificent, French lace, hand-beaded silk, a cathedral train that pooled around her like spilled cream. It had cost more than most people earned in 6 months. Victor had insisted on perfection. Victor always insisted on perfection. Victor, who was currently in bed with her sister. Lena's hands were numb. She'd stopped feeling her fingers about 20 minutes ago, right around the time she'd stopped crying. Shock had a way of shutting down the body's non-essential functions, and apparently tears qualified as non-essential after the first hour. Now she just sat, staring at the empty street, watching her breath turn to fog in the unseasonable cold. The cathedral doors were locked. The guests had scattered. The cars were gone. She was utterly, completely alone. Her phone was dead. She'd thrown it against a wall after the 17th call from her father went straight to threats instead of comfort. Her purse was somewhere inside the cathedral, probably being rifled through by the cleaning crew. Her bank accounts had been frozen the moment Victor made a single call to her father. Apparently being a Toronto fiancé came with certain privileges, and losing that status came with certain consequences. Lena had learned a lot in the past 2 hours. She'd learned that her sister Sophia had been sleeping with Victor for 6 months. She'd learned that their father had known and decided the wedding was too important to call off. She'd learned that the prenuptial agreement she'd signed, without reading, because Victor had kissed her and told her it was just a formality, gave him control of her trust fund the moment she said, "I do." She'd learned that she had been, quite literally, for sale, and Victor had been buying. The street was empty now, the kind of empty that only happens in wealthy neighborhoods where people have better places to be on a Saturday night. Christmas lights twinkled in the windows of the mansion across the street, cheerful and obscene. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm wailed and went silent. Lena pulled the wedding veil tighter around her shoulders. It wasn't warm, but it was something. The dress itself was strapless, designed to showcase the Hart family diamonds she'd been wearing when she walked into the bridal suite and found Victor and Sophia tangled in sheets that were supposed to be hers. She'd ripped the diamonds off, left them on the floor, walked out in just the dress. It had seemed dramatic at the time, powerful even. Now she was just cold. A pair of headlights appeared at the end of the street, moving slowly. Lena didn't look up. Probably another wedding guest, come to gawk at the jilted bride. Let them look. She was beyond shame now, beyond caring what Miami's elite thought of her. The car slowed as it approached. Not a guest's car. Too sleek, too dark, too expensive even for this neighborhood. A Mercedes S-Class, black as midnight, with windows tinted so dark they had to be illegal. It stopped directly in front of the cathedral. Lena still didn't look up. The engine idled for a moment, smooth and quiet. Then it cut off. A car door opened. Footsteps on pavement, deliberate and unhurried. Expensive shoes stopped in front of her. Italian leather, she noticed distantly. Handmade. You're going to freeze to death out here. The voice was male, deep, with an edge of something that might have been amusement or might have been concern. Lena couldn't tell and didn't care. Good, she said to the shoes. That dress cost a fortune. Shame to ruin it. Everything's ruined. Her voice sounded strange, hollow. What's one more thing? A pause. Then the man crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. Lena finally looked up. She knew him immediately. Everyone in Miami knew Damian Crowe. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled power. His eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds over the ocean. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her dress, and he studied her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. "Lena Hart," he said quietly, "the bride who wasn't. You know who I am, but everyone knows who you are tonight. Victor made sure of that." Damien tilted his head slightly. "What I don't know is why you're sitting on the steps instead of somewhere warm." "I don't have anywhere warm." "Your family chose him." The words came out flat. "My father chose the merger. My sister chose the bed. I'm what got chosen out." Something flickered in Damien's eyes. Not pity, she would have hated pity. Something colder and more useful. Understanding, maybe. Or calculation. He stood in one fluid movement and shrugged out of his overcoat. Before Lena could process what was happening, he'd draped it over her shoulders. The fabric was heavy, warm from his body, and smelled faintly of expensive cologne and winter night. "Come with me," Damien said. "Why would I do that?" "Because you're freezing, you're alone, and Victor Toronto is probably having you followed to make sure you don't do anything embarrassing like survive this with your dignity intact." He held out his hand. "I can offer you somewhere safe to spend the night. No obligations, no conditions. Just somewhere warm while you figure out your next move." Lena looked at the offered hand. She knew who Damien Crowe was. Everyone did. He controlled half the construction in Miami, owned 3 casinos, and had ties to operations that didn't appear in any legal filing. He was dangerous, ruthless. The kind of man her father had spent years warning her about. He was also Victor's biggest rival. "Why?" she asked. "Why what?" "Why help me? You hate Victor. I'm just collateral damage." Damien's smile was slight and didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe I think you deserve better than being collateral damage. Or maybe I just don't like seeing someone freeze to death on church steps." He kept his hand extended. "Does it matter?" It probably should have. Lena had been raised to be careful, to weigh consequences, to never make impulsive decisions. That training had led her straight into Victor's trap. Screw careful. She took his hand, his grip was warm and firm, and he pulled her to her feet with effortless strength. The wedding dress train dragged on the steps, gathering dirt and city grime. Lena didn't care anymore. Let it get ruined. Let everything get ruined. Damien guided her to the Mercedes, opened the back door himself. The interior was warm, leather-scented, blessedly comfortable. Lena sank into the seat and felt something inside her finally unclench. Damien slid in beside her and nodded to the driver, a broad-shouldered man who didn't ask questions or make eye contact. The car pulled away from the cathedral smoothly, leaving the scene of Lena's humiliation behind. They drove in silence for several minutes, heading east toward the bay. Lena watched Miami slide past the tinted windows, palm trees strung with white lights, Art Deco buildings glowing pink and turquoise, the kind of beauty that only existed when you had money to maintain it. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "My home," Damien said. "Unless you'd prefer a hotel." "Victor owns half the hotels in Miami." "Not the ones I own, but point taken. My home is private, secure. Victor can't reach you there." Lena turned to look at him. He sat perfectly still, hands folded in his lap, expression neutral. Nothing in his posture suggested threat or expectation. He was simply there, present, offering sanctuary without demanding anything in return. It should have felt suspicious. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing anyone had offered her in months. "Okay," she said. Damien's house wasn't a house, it was an estate. The Mercedes passed through iron gates that opened silently, rolled down a private drive lined with royal palms, and stopped in front of a sprawling Mediterranean revival mansion that glowed white and gold in the landscape lighting. 17 bedrooms, Damien said as he helped her out of the car. "Most of them empty, you can have your pick." The front door was already open, held by a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a crisp black dress. She didn't react to Lena's wedding gown or disheveled state, just smiled and stepped aside. "Miss Hart, this is Elena. She manages the household. Anything you need, ask her." Elena nodded. "I've prepared the guest suite on the second floor. It's private, has its own bathroom, and the doors lock from the inside." The casual mention of locks sent a clear message. Lena's safety was paramount. This wasn't a gilded cage. It was actual sanctuary. "Thank you," Lena managed. "Would you like something to eat?" Elena asked gently. "You look half frozen." Food seemed impossible, but Lena realized she hadn't eaten since breakfast. "Maybe something warm?" "I'll bring hot chocolate and sandwiches to the sitting room. Mr. Crow will show you the way." The sitting room was everything the name suggested. Comfortable without being ostentatious, with deep sofas, a fireplace already burning, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Lena sank into a chair near the fire and felt warmth seep back into her bones for the first time in hours. Damien poured brandy from a crystal decanter but didn't offer her any. Smart. She probably shouldn't drink on an empty stomach and an emotional breakdown. He sat across from her, firelight playing across his features, and said nothing. The silence stretched. It should have been awkward, but it wasn't. It felt strangely respectful, as if he was giving her space to exist without performing or explaining or apologizing for taking up room. Elena arrived with a tray, hot chocolate in an actual china cup, small sandwiches arranged carefully, a linen napkin. She set it on the side table within Lena's reach and disappeared again without a word. Lena picked up the hot chocolate. The first sip was perfect, rich and warm and sweet enough to cut through the bitterness coating her throat. "Better?" Damien asked. "Better." She took another sip. "You're being very kind to someone you don't know." "I know enough." He swirled the brandy in his glass. "I know Victor Toronto is a bastard. I know your father is a coward who sold his daughter for a construction contract. And I know you deserved better than what happened tonight." "How do you know any of that?" "Because I make it my business to know things about Victor. And because," his mouth curved slightly, "you're sitting in my house in a wedding dress instead of on your honeymoon. That tells me everything I need to know about how tonight went." Lena set down the cup carefully. "You hate him, Victor." "Yes." "Why?" Damien was quiet for a moment, studying the brandy as if it held answers. When he spoke, his voice was colder than the December wind outside. 7 years ago, my younger brother Nico was arrested for drug trafficking. 30 kilos of cocaine found in a warehouse he'd rented for a legitimate construction supply business. He was 23 years old, fresh out of business school, trying to prove himself. Lena felt her stomach turn. Nico swore he didn't know about the drugs. Said he'd rented the warehouse through a broker, never even saw it before the arrest. But the evidence was overwhelming. Fingerprints on the packaging, payments traced to accounts in his name. He went to prison for 5 years. And Victor planted everything. Damien's voice didn't rise, but it hardened like steel. Victor wanted the city contracts Nico was bidding on. He had connections in the DA's office, friends in the police department. He framed my brother, destroyed his life, and walked away with $60 million in construction deals. The sandwich Lena had picked up suddenly felt like ash in her mouth. She set it down. "You have proof?" "Now I do. Took me 6 years to find it." Witness who was paid to plant the drugs finally grew a conscience. Financial records showing Victor's shell companies funding the setup. Nico was released last year, charges vacated, record expunged. But those 5 years? Damien's eyes met hers, cold and absolutely certain. Victor stole those. No judge can give them back. Lena felt something crack open in her chest. The wedding, our engagement, that wasn't about me at all, was it? No. Damien's voice gentled slightly. It was about your father's development company. Victor wanted the partnership because it would give him leverage over city planning committees, access to waterfront projects, and, most importantly, the political cover to shut down my legitimate businesses. I was a merger. The words tasted bitter. A contract with a white dress. You were a weapon he planned to use against me. And when you caught him with your sister, when you refused to go through with it, Damien shrugged. You stopped being useful, so he discarded you. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Lena had thought she was getting married for love. Victor had proposed on a yacht, gotten down on one knee, told her she was the only woman he'd ever wanted. She'd believed every word. She'd been an idiot. Why are you telling me this? She asked quietly. Because you deserve to know the truth. And because, Damien leaned forward slightly, you have a choice to make now. What choice? Whether to let Victor win. He humiliated you tonight, destroyed your reputation, took your money, turned your family against you. He's counting on you to slink away quietly, maybe leave Miami entirely. That's what most people would do. And if I don't, then you fight back. Something dangerous flickered in Damien's eyes. You learn who your real enemies are, and you make sure they regret underestimating you. Lena's heart was pounding. You want revenge. I want justice. There's a difference. Damien sat back. But I'm not asking you to do anything. Tonight you're a guest. Tomorrow you can walk away and never see me again. I'll have Elena arrange a car, set you up with a hotel under a name Victor won't trace. You can start over somewhere new. Or you stay. You learn the truth about the man who is going to marry you, and you decide what you want to do with that information. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Lena stared into the flames, watching them dance and consume, destroy, and transform. Her whole life had been about being careful, playing it safe, trusting the men in her life to make the right decisions. Look where that had gotten her. I want to know everything, she said finally. Every lie Victor told me, every crime he committed, every person he hurt. I want to know it all. Damien's smile was slow and approving. Then we'll talk in the morning. Tonight, you rest. Elena will show you to your room. Tomorrow, we begin. He stood and offered his hand again. This time, Lena took it without hesitation. Elena led her upstairs to a suite that was bigger than Lena's entire apartment had been. The bed was already turned down, soft and white and impossibly inviting. A silk nightgown lay across the pillows. In her size, Lena noticed. Someone had been very prepared. The bathroom has everything you need, Elena said. Fresh towels, toiletries, a robe. If you need anything else, there's a phone by the bed. Just dial 0. Thank you, Elena, for everything. The older woman's expression softened. Get some sleep, Miss Hart. Things always look different in the morning. Lena wasn't sure about that, but she was too exhausted to argue. She locked the door after Elena left, then stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger, mascara smudged, hair falling from its elaborate updo, wedding dress wrinkled and stained. She looked like a ghost bride, something out of a horror story. Maybe that's exactly what she was. It took 20 minutes to get out of the dress. The buttons went all the way down the back, tiny pearls that Victor had insisted were romantic. Lena had to contort herself to reach them, and halfway through she nearly gave up and just ripped the damn thing off. But she didn't. She worked each button free carefully, methodically, refusing to let Victor steal even this small act of control. When the dress finally pooled at her feet, she stepped out of it and left it there on the marble floor. Let someone else deal with it. She was done. The shower was hot enough to hurt, and Lena stood under the spray until her skin turned pink and her tears mixed with the water and disappeared down the drain. She cried for the wedding that wasn't, for the love that had never been real, for the sister who'd betrayed her and the father who'd sold her. She cried until there was nothing left, and then she dried off, put on the silk nightgown, and crawled into the enormous bed. Sleep claimed her almost instantly, deep and dreamless and absolutely necessary. Oh. Morning came with sunlight streaming through windows Lena didn't remember opening. She blinked awake slowly, disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling, the Egyptian cotton sheets, the faint sound of waves. Then it all came rushing back. The wedding. The betrayal. Damien Crowe. Lena sat up and found a tray on the nightstand. Coffee, orange juice, pastries still warm from the oven. A note in elegant script. Join me for breakfast when you're ready. No rush. D. She took her time, showered again, used the expensive toiletries that smelled like jasmine and vanilla. Found her clothes from yesterday. Someone had cleaned and pressed them overnight, which felt surreal. Got dressed in jeans and a sweater that felt infinitely more comfortable than a wedding gown. When she finally made her way downstairs following the smell of coffee and bacon, she found Damien in a sunroom overlooking the bay. He wore casual clothes, dark jeans, a white button-down, and was reading a newspaper like this was any ordinary Sunday morning. "Good morning," he said, looking up. "Sleep well?" "Better than I expected." Lena poured herself coffee from the silver pot on the sideboard. "Thank you for all of this." "You're welcome." Damien folded the paper. "Hungry?" They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, the kind that suggested they'd known each other longer than 12 hours. Lena tried the eggs, the bacon, the fresh fruit that was probably flown in from somewhere ridiculous. Everything was perfect, which made sense. Damien Crowe didn't seem like the kind of man who accepted less than perfection. "Your brother," Lena said finally. "Nico. Is he here?" "He lives in the guest house, keeps to himself mostly, working on getting his life back together." Damien's expression softened slightly. Prison changes people. He's quieter now, but he's strong. He'll be okay. I'd like to meet him, if he's willing. I'm sure he'd appreciate that. Damien set down his fork. But first, there's something you need to see. He led her to a study, all dark wood and leather, with built-in shelves holding books that looked actually read. A laptop sat open on the massive desk, and Damien gestured for Lena to sit. "These are the financial records," he said, clicking through files. "Victor's shell companies, the payments to the witness who framed Nico, the construction deals he won while my brother was in prison." Lena leaned forward, scanning the numbers. It was all there, proof of conspiracy, bribery, fraud, enough to destroy Victor if it ever went public. "Why haven't you used this?" "Because I've been waiting for the right moment. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and all that." Damien pulled up another file. "This is where it gets interesting for you." The prenuptial agreement appeared on screen. Lena recognized her signature at the bottom, remembered Victor's kisses as she signed without reading. "Clause 7, Damien said, pointing. "You waived all rights to your trust fund the moment you signed this document. Not when you got married, when you signed." Lena's blood ran cold. "But that means Victor has had control of your money for 6 months, since the day you got engaged." The room spun slightly. "That's not legal, is it?" "It's questionable. But your father co-signed the agreement as trustee, which technically gave him the authority to transfer control. A good lawyer could fight it, but it would take years and cost more than you currently have access to." Lena sat back, feeling sick. He planned this from the beginning, the engagement, the prenup, all of it. "Yes." Damien's voice was gentle but firm. "And there's more. Victor has been using your trust fund to finance land deals that would have directly competed with my development projects. If you'd married him, he would have had complete control, not just of your money, but of your father's company through the merger agreement. He would have destroyed you. He would have tried." Damien's smile was cold. "But you walked away. You refused to be his weapon. And now he's scrambling because the merger is dead, and he's overextended on projects he can't finish without your father's political connections." Lena stared at the screen, at the evidence of her own foolishness. She'd been so blind, so trusting, so desperate to believe Victor loved her. "What do I do?" she asked quietly. "That depends on what you want." "I want my life back. I want my money back. I want—" She stopped, surprised by the vehemence in her own voice. "I want him to pay for what he did. To me, to your brother, to everyone he's hurt." Damien studied her for a long moment. "Then we work together. I have the evidence. You have the motivation. And together, we have something Victor can't fight." "What's that?" "The truth, and the will to use it." Before Lena could respond, her phone, charged overnight by helpful, invisible staff, buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. "Victor." "Don't answer," Damien said immediately, but Lena was already reaching for it. "I want to hear what he has to say." She answered on speaker. "Lena, baby, thank God." Victor's voice was smooth, concerned, perfectly calibrated. "I've been worried sick. Where are you?" "Somewhere safe." A pause, then, more carefully. "I know you're upset about yesterday, but you have to understand Sophia means nothing to me. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. You're the one I love." Lena's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Really? Is that why you've been stealing from my trust fund for 6 months?" Silence on the other end. Then Victor's voice changed, went cold and hard. "Who told you that?" "Does it matter? I know everything, Victor. The prenup, the merger, what you did to Nico Crowe, all of it." "You don't know what you're talking about." But there was uncertainty now, fear creeping in at the edges. "Whatever Damien Crowe told you, it's lies. He's trying to turn you against me." You did that yourself when you got in bed with my sister. Lena, listen to me. No, you listen. She was surprised by how steady her voice was, how calm she felt. Whatever we had is over. The engagement is over. And if you come near me again, I'll make sure every newspaper in Miami knows exactly what kind of man you are. You wouldn't dare. Try me. She hung up. The silence that followed was profound. Lena set the phone down carefully, her hands shaking just slightly, and looked up to find Damien watching her with something that might have been respect. Well, he said quietly, that was brave. That was stupid. He'll retaliate. Probably, but that's what the security team is for. Damien gestured toward the windows, where Lena could now see men in dark suits stationed around the property. Victor can't reach you here, and by the time you leave, we'll have plans in place to keep you safe. Why? The question burst out before Lena could stop it. Why are you doing all this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Damien was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. When he spoke, his voice was careful and honest. Because 7 years ago, I watched my brother get destroyed by a man who thought he was untouchable. I watched Nico lose everything, his freedom, his future, his faith in the world, and I swore I would make Victor pay for that. He met her eyes. But revenge isn't just about hurting him. It's about making sure he can't hurt anyone else. You're not the first person Victor's used, Lena. If we don't stop him, you won't be the last. The weight of that settled over her like a blanket. Responsibility, purpose, something bigger than her own pain. Then let's stop him, Lena said. Damien's smile was slow and approving. Tomorrow, we start planning. Tonight, you rest. And in the morning, we begin taking your life back. Lena stood, felt strength returning to her legs, fire returning to her blood. She was done being a victim, done being someone else's chess piece. It was time to play the game herself. The morning light came differently on Monday, harder, more focused, carrying the weight of decisions that couldn't be unmade. Lena woke to the sound of waves and the knowledge that her old life was gone, burned to ash in a bridal suite she'd never see again. What came next would be entirely her choice, and that terrified her more than anything Victor had done. She found Damien already in the study, surrounded by documents that painted a 7-year portrait of corruption. He looked up when she entered, his gray eyes assessing, and gestured to the chair across from him. Coffee's on the sideboard. You'll want it strong for this. Lena poured herself a cup and sat. The study felt different in daylight, less imposing, more like a war room. Maps of Miami's development projects covered one wall, each marked with colored pins that formed patterns she didn't yet understand. Tell me how bad it is, she said. Damien pushed a folder across the desk. Your trust fund had $8 million when your mother died. As of this morning, there's $43,000 left. The number hit like a physical blow. In 6 months? Victor's good at spending other people's money. He used most of it as collateral for construction loans, betting that the merger with your father would go through and give him access to municipal contracts worth 10 times what he borrowed. Damien's finger traced a line through the documents. Without the merger, those loans are underwater. He can't pay them back, can't finish the projects, and can't get new financing because the banks know he's overextended. So he's desperate. Extremely. Which makes him dangerous. Damien pulled up another file on his laptop. This is from this morning. Victor filed an injunction claiming you're mentally unstable and trying to get himself appointed as your financial guardian. Lena's hands tightened on the coffee cup. That's insane. We're not even married. You were engaged. He's arguing that the prenuptial agreement established a fiduciary relationship that gives him standing to protect your interests. It's thin, but he's got a judge who owes him favors. The hearing is Thursday. Can he actually win? If you don't show up and fight, maybe. But you're going to be there, with lawyers who will eviscerate his argument. Damien's smile was cold and precise. I've already retained Morrison and Chang. They're the best in Miami, and they love cases where they get to humiliate men like Victor. Something warm unfurled in Lena's chest. Not quite hope, but close enough to start. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. Victor doesn't lose gracefully, and he's going to come at you with everything he has. Let him try. The words surprised Lena with their vehemence. I'm done being afraid of him. Damien studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Good. because we're going to need that fire. The door opened and a young man entered, late 20s with Damien's dark hair but softer features, eyes that held too much knowledge for someone so young. He moved carefully, like someone who'd learned to take up less space than he deserved. "Nico," Damien said, standing, "this is Lena Hart." Nico's gaze flicked to her, wary but curious. The runaway bride. Victor must be losing his mind. That's the idea. Lena stood and offered her hand. "I'm sorry about what happened to you." "What Victor did." Nico's handshake was firm but brief. "Ancient history. 5 years in Coleman Federal Penitentiary teaches you to let things go." But his eyes said differently. "They said some things you never let go. You just learn to carry them better." "Nico's been helping me build the case against Victor," Damien said. "He knows the construction business, knows how Victor operates, and he has every reason to see this through. Plus, I've got nothing better to do," Nico added with a bitter smile. "Turns out having a federal conviction on your record, even a vacated one, makes it hard to get legitimate work. Clients get nervous." Lena felt a flash of anger on his behalf. "That's not fair. Fair doesn't enter into it. It's just how it is." Nico moved to the map wall, studying the pins. But watching Victor go down might be worth 5 years. Might even make it mean something. Damien's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Show her the construction sites. The ones that matter." Nico pointed to a cluster of red pins along the waterfront. "These are Victor's current projects. Luxury condos, mostly, aimed at foreign investors. He's got $60 million tied up in them, borrowed against your trust fund and his own assets." His finger moved to a blue pin. "This is Damien's project. Mixed-use development, affordable housing component, city contracts all locked in." "Victor wanted those contracts," Lena said, understanding dawning. "More than wanted. Needed. His projects are luxuries. Damien's are necessities. When the city council votes on budget allocations, essential projects get funded first. Victor was counting on the merger to kill Damien's projects and free up the money for his. But without the merger, the council votes next month, and Damien's project is still the priority. Victor's loans come due in 6 weeks, and he doesn't have the cash to cover them." Nico's smile was sharp. "He's about to lose everything." Damien moved to stand beside his brother, which is when he'll be most dangerous. A cornered rat bites hardest. "Then we don't corner him," Lena said. Both men turned to look at her. "We give him an escape route, one that leads exactly where we want him to go." "Explain," Damien said quietly. Lena's mind was racing, pieces falling into place. "Victor filed that injunction because he's panicking. He needs access to money, any money, and my trust fund is the only source he has left. But what if we make him think there's another option?" "What kind of option?" "My father." The words tasted bitter, but Lena forced them out. "Richard Hart is a coward, but he's not stupid. He signed that prenup because Victor convinced him the merger was worth it. But now the merger's dead and his daughter is suing. If we approach him the right way, we might be able to flip him." Nico frowned. "Why would he turn on Victor? He sold you out once already." "Because my father's first priority is always my father. If we show him that staying loyal to Victor means losing his company, his reputation, and his freedom, he'll throw Victor under the bus without a second thought." Ooh, Lena met Damien's eyes. "We just have to make the threat real enough." Damien was quiet for a moment, considering. "It's risky. If your father warns Victor, he won't. Not if we make it clear that his survival depends on cooperating." Lena felt certainty settling into her bones. "I know him. I know exactly what he's afraid of and exactly how to use it." "Cold," Nico observed, but there was approval in his voice. "Practical," Lena corrected. "I'm done playing nice with people who treated me like property." Damien's smile was slow and genuine. "All right. We approach your father, but carefully and with leverage in place first." He turned to Nico. "Can you put together a package showing how the Hart Development Company benefited from Victor's fraud? Focus on the construction contracts that were awarded after Nico's arrest. Anything that connects Richard's signature to deals that only happened because Victor eliminated competition." "I can have it by tomorrow," Nico said. "Good. Lena, you'll need to make the initial contact. Set up a meeting somewhere neutral, somewhere he feels safe enough to listen." "His club," Lena said immediately. The Biscayne Yacht Club. Yeah, he has lunch there every Tuesday at 1. Private dining room, members only, no one to overhear. Can you get in? I'm still a member, or I was. Lena pulled out her phone. Let's find out if Daddy's embarrassment extends to actually canceling my membership. The call to the yacht club was brief and professionally cold. Yes, Miss Hart's membership was still active. Yes, she could reserve the private dining room for tomorrow at 1. No, there were no restrictions on her account. Lena hung up and looked at Damien. We're on? Then we prepare. Tonight you study these documents until you know them better than your own name. Tomorrow, you walk into that room and you break your father. Damien's voice was gentle but absolutely firm. Can you do that? Lena thought about her father's face when he'd refused to answer her calls, when he'd chosen a business merger over his daughter's happiness, when he'd co-signed away her future without blinking. She thought about Sophia, smug and satisfied in Victor's bed. She thought about every time she'd been told to be quiet, be careful, be grateful for the scraps of affection thrown her way. Yes, she said, I can do that. The rest of Monday disappeared into preparation. Nico brought files, bank records, emails that painted a damning picture of collusion between Richard Hart and Victor Torano. Lena read until her eyes burned, memorizing dates and dollar amounts, learning the architecture of her father's betrayal. Elena brought food that Lena barely tasted, coffee that kept her focused, quiet encouragement that meant more than it should. Damien worked beside her, explaining legal nuances, pointing out the weaknesses in Richard's position, building the case that would destroy him if he refused to cooperate. Your father signed off on 3 separate deals that only went through because Victor had eliminated competition, Damien said, highlighting another document. He had to know they were suspicious, had to know Victor was playing dirty. He knew, Lena said quietly. My father always knows. He just doesn't care as long as he wins. Then we make him care. Damien closed the laptop. It's late. You should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Lena looked at the clock. Past midnight, hours lost to learning how deeply she'd been betrayed. I don't think I can sleep. Try anyway. You need to be sharp tomorrow, and exhaustion makes people sloppy. He was right, of course. Lena stood, stretched muscles gone stiff from sitting. Damien, why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just about Victor. He was quiet for a long moment, shadows playing across his face. Because 7 years ago, I couldn't protect Nico. I had power and money and connections, but I couldn't stop them from destroying him. I failed him. His voice was low, almost painful. I won't fail someone else the same way. I'm not your redemption project. No, you're someone who deserves justice, and I have the means to help you get it. That's enough. Lena wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe this was simple alliance, mutual benefit, nothing more complicated. But standing there in the lamplight, watching Damien's face, she felt something shift between them, recognition, maybe, or understanding. They were both people who'd been betrayed by those they should have been able to trust, both fighting to reclaim something that had been stolen. Good night, Damien, she said softly. Good night, Lena. And Lena? She paused at the door. You're going to do brilliantly tomorrow. Your father won't know what hit him. She carried those words upstairs like armor. Tuesday morning came with nerves that even Elena's perfect breakfast couldn't settle. Lena dressed carefully, a tailored navy suit that said business, not victim, with her mother's pearls for courage. She looked professional, composed, every inch the Hart family heir. She looked nothing like the broken woman who'd sat on cathedral steps 3 days ago. Damien drove her to the yacht club himself, the Mercedes gliding through Miami traffic with practiced ease. He'd dressed for the occasion too, charcoal suit, Italian leather shoes, looking every bit the powerful businessman he was. Remember, he said as they pulled up to the club's entrance, you're not asking your father for anything. You're telling him how this is going to go. Stay calm, stay confident, and don't let him see you emotional. What if he refuses? Then we move to Plan B. Public exposure, federal investigation, complete destruction of his reputation and business. But he won't refuse. Men like Richard Hart are survivors. When you show him the life raft, he'll grab it. Lena took a deep breath. Okay, let's do this. The Biscayne Yacht Club was exactly as she remembered. White linen, polished brass, old money dripping from every surface. The hostess recognized Lena and didn't even blink at her appearance, just led her to the private dining room with professional discretion. Richard Hart was already there, seated at the table with a scotch that probably wasn't his first. He looked older than Lena remembered, stress carving new lines around his mouth and eyes. He stood when she entered, uncertain whether to hug her or keep his distance. Lena made the choice for him, sitting across the table without offering any greeting beyond a cool nod. "Lena." His voice was gruff, uncomfortable. "You look well." "I'm surviving. No thanks to you." Richard flinched but recovered quickly. "Now, sweetheart, you have to understand my position. The merger was important, worth billions to the company. I couldn't let personal feelings stop." Lena's voice was sharp enough to cut. "I didn't come here for excuses. I came to give you one chance to save yourself." Her father's expression shifted from paternal to wary. "What are you talking about?" Lena pulled out the folder Damien had prepared, slid it across the table. "Open it." Richard did, his face paling as he scanned the documents. Construction contracts, bank transfers, emails with Victor discussing deals that happened suspiciously close to Nico Crow's arrest. Evidence of collusion, fraud, possibly conspiracy. "Where did you get these?" His voice was barely a whisper. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that I have them, and I'm prepared to give them to the federal prosecutor investigating Victor unless you cooperate." "Investigating Victor? For what?" "For framing Nico Crow 7 years ago. For fraud, corruption, bribery. The case is solid, Daddy. They're going to arrest him within the month." Lena leaned forward. "And when they do, they're going to look very carefully at everyone who benefited from his crimes, including you." Richard's hands shook slightly as he closed the folder. "I didn't know about Nico. I swear, I had no idea Victor—" "You knew enough. You knew Victor was eliminating competition, and you profited from it. That makes you an accessory, legally speaking. You could be looking at 10 years in federal prison." "Jesus Christ, Lena." Richard drained his scotch. "What do you want?" "I want you to testify against Victor. I want you to provide documentation of every deal you did with him, every contract that came through under suspicious circumstances. And I want you to return control of my trust fund immediately. The trust fund is complicated. The prenup is fraudulent. Victor had you sign over control before I even got engaged, which means the whole agreement is void. Any competent lawyer will tear it apart in 5 minutes." Lena's voice was steel. "But if you fight me on this, I'll make sure those documents end up in the hands of every prosecutor in Miami. You'll lose everything: the company, your reputation, your freedom. Is Victor's friendship really worth that?" Richard looked at his daughter like he was seeing her for the first time. "When did you become so hard?" "When you sold me to a criminal and chose profit over family." Lena stood. "You have until Friday to decide. Cooperate and you might salvage your business and stay out of prison. Refuse and I'll burn your whole world down and sleep peacefully doing it." "And if I testify, if I help you destroy Victor, what happens to Sophia?" The question caught Lena off guard. "What about her?" "She's pregnant." Richard's voice was heavy. "Victor's child. She told me last week." The room tilted slightly. Sophia, pregnant with Victor's baby. Sophia, who destroyed Lena's wedding and apparently gotten everything she wanted in return. "Then she made her choice," Lena said, voice remarkably steady. "And she'll live with the consequences, just like you will." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "One more thing, Daddy. If you warn Victor about any of this, if you give him even a hint that we're coming for him, I'll consider that your answer. And you'll find out exactly how ruthless I can be." She didn't wait for his response. Damien was waiting in the Mercedes, reading something on his phone. He looked up when Lena slid into the passenger seat, searching her face. "How'd it go?" "He'll cooperate. He's too much of a coward to do anything else." Lena buckled her seatbelt with shaking hands. "Sophia's pregnant, with Victor's baby." Damien's expression darkened. "He told you that to manipulate you." "Probably. Does it matter?" Lena laughed bitterly. "She wins anyway. She gets Victor, gets the baby, gets everything she wanted. She gets a criminal who's about to lose his empire and possibly his freedom. That's not winning, Lena. That's choosing the wrong side." The car pulled away from the yacht club, heading back toward the estate. Lena watched Miami slide past, palm trees and perfect weather, beauty built on money that came from places people didn't ask about. "Do you ever wonder if we're just as bad as they are?" she asked quietly. "Using people, manipulating them, destroying lives?" "Every day." Damien's voice was honest, unflinching. "But there's a difference between what we're doing and what Victor does. We're fighting for justice. He fights for power. Intent matters." "Does it? In the end, people still get hurt. The right people. The ones who chose to build their empires on lies and broken lives." He glanced at her. "Your father made his choices. Sophia made hers. Victor made his. Now they face the consequences. That's not cruelty, Lena. That's accountability." She wanted to believe that, needed to believe it, because the alternative was accepting that she'd become someone she didn't recognize, someone cold enough to destroy her own father, hard enough to watch her sister's life implode without flinching. They reached the estate as afternoon was sliding toward evening. Inside, Nico was waiting with news that made Lena's conversation with her father feel almost quaint. "Victor knows," he said without preamble. "He knows you're working with Damien, knows you're building a case. Someone tipped him off." Damien went very still. "Who?" "Don't know yet, but he's panicking. Made 3 calls in the last hour, to his lawyers, to someone in the DA's office, and to a number we can't trace." Nico's expression was grim. "That last one worries me. Victor only uses burner phones when he's planning something illegal." "He's going to come after Lena," Damien said flatly. "Or after you, or both." Nico pulled up security footage on his tablet. "We've had 2 cars circle the property in the last 3 hours. Different makes, different plates, but similar pattern. They're watching." Lena felt cold settle into her bones. "What do we do?" "We move faster than planned." Damien was already pulling out his phone. "Nico, contact Morrison and Chang. Tell them we need the injunction hearing moved up, preferably to tomorrow. I want Victor in court before he has time to make whatever move he's planning." "On it." "And increase security. Double the perimeter guards, install cameras on the beach access, and make sure Lena is never alone. Not in the house, not anywhere." "Damien," Lena started. "This isn't negotiable." His voice was harder than she'd heard it. "Victor's desperate, and desperate men do desperate things. Until he's in custody, you're in danger." The weight of that settled over the room like a shroud. This was real now, not just legal maneuvering and financial manipulation, but actual physical threat. Victor wouldn't hesitate to hurt her if it served his purposes. She'd seen that cold calculation in his eyes, had mistaken it for ambition instead of cruelty. "All right," she said quietly. "We do it your way." The rest of Tuesday disappeared into lockdown preparation. Elena moved Lena's things to a bedroom on the 2nd floor. Interior, no windows facing the street, door that locked from inside, with a bolt that could stop a battering ram. Nico ran security drills with guards who moved like military, checking sight lines and response times. Damien made calls that sounded casual, but weren't, to judges, lawyers, people who owed him favors. Building a wall of protection around Lena that was part legal strategy, part actual fortress. She should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt trapped. "I'm not a prisoner," she told Damien when he checked on her that evening. "No, you're someone being protected from a dangerous man." He leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion finally showing around his eyes. "I know this feels extreme, but Victor's already proven he'll destroy anyone who threatens him. I won't let you be next." "Is this how Nico felt? When you tried to protect him before?" Damien flinched like she'd struck him. "That was different." "Was it? You said you failed him, that you had power but couldn't stop them." Lena moved closer. "Are you protecting me, or are you trying to fix what happened to your brother?" The silence stretched between them, heavy with truth neither wanted to speak aloud. "Maybe both," Damien finally said. "Does it matter if the result is keeping you alive?" "It matters if you're making decisions based on guilt instead of strategy." "Then trust that I'm smart enough to know the difference." His voice softened. "Lena, I've been fighting Victor for 7 years. I know how he thinks, how he operates. And I'm telling you, right now at this moment, you're in real danger. Let me help you, please." The please broke something in her. Damien Crowe didn't beg, didn't ask for permission. But here he was, asking her to trust him with her safety, her life. Okay, Lena whispered. We do this together. Wednesday morning brought Morrison and Chang, a perfectly matched pair of legal sharks in $1,000 suits who looked at Lena like she was the most fascinating case they'd seen in years. Miss Hart, Morrison said, spreading documents across Damien's dining table. We've reviewed your situation, and I have to say, this is deliciously straightforward. Victor Toronto has committed approximately 14 separate violations of fiduciary law, not counting the fraud. Can we get the injunction thrown out? Lena asked. Thrown out, laughed out, and possibly used as evidence in criminal proceedings. Chang smiled like a predator scenting blood. The judge he filed with has recused himself. Apparently someone reminded him that taking bribes from defendants is frowned upon. The new judge is Sandra Reeves, and she hates men who exploit women financially. We're scheduled for tomorrow at 10, Morrison continued. You'll testify about the prenup, about Victor's control of your trust fund. We'll present evidence of financial misconduct. Judge Reeves will dismiss his petition and likely order an immediate audit of your accounts. And Victor? The lawyers exchanged glances. Technically, our job is just the civil case, but we have friends in the prosecutor's office. Friends who would be very interested in the documents Mr. Crow has provided regarding the Nico Crow case. Damien leaned back in his chair. How long until they move? If we deliver the evidence tomorrow after the hearing, arrest warrant by Monday, maybe sooner if they consider him a flight risk. 5 days. In 5 days, Victor would be in federal custody and Lena's nightmare would be over. It felt too easy, too clean. What's the catch? She asked. Morrison's smile faded. The catch is that Victor knows he's running out of time. Men in his position tend to make dramatic gestures. We'll have courthouse security on high alert, but he might try something before we get there, Lena finished. We'll be ready, Damien said quietly. The rest of Wednesday was waiting. Lena tried to read, to eat, to do anything that felt normal. But normal was gone, replaced by this strange, suspended reality where armed men patrolled the gardens and every car that passed felt like a threat. Evening came with storm clouds rolling in from the Atlantic, turning the sky bruise purple and angry. Lena stood at the window of her secure bedroom watching lightning fork across the horizon and felt the weight of everything pressing down. A knock at the door made her turn. Come in. Damien entered carrying 2 glasses of wine. Thought you might need this. I don't drink when I'm stressed. Good rule. But tonight might be an exception. He handed her a glass. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Tonight you should rest. Is that an order? But Lena took the wine, sipped it. Good wine, the kind that probably cost more than her first car. It's a suggestion from someone who knows what it's like to face your demons in court. Damien moved to the window beside her. When Nico was sentenced, I sat in that courtroom and watched them destroy him. Watched him try to stay strong while they called him a criminal, a drug dealer, everything he wasn't. And I couldn't do anything, couldn't protect him, couldn't even promise him it would be okay. But you got him out eventually. Eventually. After 5 years of his life were gone. Damien's reflection in the window looked haunted. I won't let Victor take 5 years from you, Lena. I won't let him take anything else. Lena turned to face him. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to make it true. They stood there in the lamplight, storm building outside, something building between them that neither was ready to name. It would be easy to close the distance, to seek comfort in touch, to let this become something more than alliance. But Lena had just escaped one man who'd wanted to own her. She wouldn't walk into another cage, no matter how gilded. Thank you, she said instead. For everything. For believing me, for helping me, for making me feel human instead of broken. You were never broken, just hurt. Damien's voice was soft. There's a difference. He left before Lena could respond, closing the door quietly behind him. She finished the wine alone, watching the storm roll in, and tried not to think about tomorrow, about courtrooms and confrontations and all the ways this could still go wrong. Tried not to think about Damien's eyes in the lamplight, or the way her heart had jumped when he'd promised to protect her. Tried to remember that this was business, strategy, mutual benefit. But as thunder rattled the windows and rain began to fall, Lena admitted the truth she'd been avoiding for days. Somewhere between the cathedral steps and this moment, Damien Crow had become more than an ally. and that terrified her more than anything Victor could do. The storm had passed by morning, leaving Miami washed clean and gleaming under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Lena dressed in the same navy suit she'd worn to face her father, armor that had worked once and would have to work again. Her hands were steady as she fastened her mother's pearls, but her reflection showed eyes that hadn't slept enough, a jaw set too tight with determination that felt more like desperation. Morrison and Chang arrived at 8 sharp, their Mercedes pulling up behind Damien's in a convoy that felt simultaneously protective and ominous. They went over testimony in the dining room while Elena served coffee no one drank, running through questions and answers until Lena could recite them in her sleep. "He'll try to rattle you," Morrison warned. "Victor's lawyer will paint you as vindictive, emotional, a woman scorned who's lying to get revenge. Don't engage, just stick to the facts." "What if he's there?" Lena asked. "In the courtroom?" "He will be. It's his petition." Chang's expression was sympathetic. "But Judge Reeves won't let him speak directly to you, and will be right there the whole time." Damien appeared in the doorway, dressed in a charcoal suit that made him look like what he was. Dangerous money wrapped in legitimate business. "The cars are ready. Security team will follow at a distance, close enough to respond if needed." "You're expecting trouble," Lena said. "I'm expecting Victor to be Victor, which means expecting everything." He met her eyes. "But you're going to walk in there, tell the truth, and walk out free. That's how this goes." Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the legal system would work, that justice would prevail, that good preparation would beat Victor's money and connections. But she'd trusted before and been proven catastrophically wrong. "Let's go," she said instead of voicing her doubts. The courthouse was downtown, a brutalist concrete structure that looked exactly like what it was. A place where lives were decided by people in black robes who'd never met you before and would forget you the moment you left. Lena climbed the steps flanked by Morrison and Chang, aware of Damien a step behind, solid and present. Cameras flashed as they entered. Somehow the press had gotten wind of the hearing, reporters shouting questions that blurred together into white noise. Lena kept her head up, her expression neutral, and didn't respond. Morrison had been clear. Nothing she said outside the courtroom could help, but plenty could hurt. Inside, the building was all marble and echoes, footsteps bouncing off walls that had absorbed decades of other people's tragedies. They took an elevator to the 4th floor, walked down a corridor lined with courtrooms where families waited on benches with the patience of people who'd learned the law moved slowly. Courtroom 4C was smaller than Lena expected. Wood paneling, a judge's bench that looked like a pulpit, tables for opposing counsel, and a witness stand that seemed impossibly exposed. She took her seat between Morrison and Chang and tried not to look at the other side of the room. She looked anyway. Victor sat with his lawyer, a silver-haired man Lena recognized as Gerald Ashford, who specialized in making rich men's problems disappear. Victor wore a navy suit similar to hers, probably calculated to suggest they were a matched pair, two reasonable people trying to resolve a misunderstanding. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes found hers across the courtroom and held them with an intensity that made her skin crawl. He looked confident, like he'd already won. Lena forced herself to look away, to focus on the empty judge's bench, on Morrison's quiet reassurances, on anything except the man who'd tried to own her. All rise. Judge Sandra Reeves entered like a force of nature, 60-something, iron-gray hair, and an expression that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. She took her seat, surveyed the courtroom with eyes that missed nothing, and nodded to the bailiff. Case number 2025-CV-8847, Victor Toronto versus Lena Hart. Petition for emergency guardianship. Mr. Ashford, you filed this motion. Make it quick. Ashford stood, all polish and practiced sincerity. Your Honor, my client seeks only to protect Miss Hart's interests during a time of obvious emotional distress. Following the unfortunate dissolution of their engagement, Miss Hart has made concerning decisions that suggest she may not be capable of managing her substantial trust fund. We ask the court to appoint Mr. Toronto as temporary guardian until Miss Hart has had time to recover. And recover from what exactly? Judge Reeves's voice could have cut glass. Being jilted? Finding out her fiancé was sleeping with her sister? Or discovering he'd been stealing from her trust fund for 6 months? Ashford didn't even blink. Those are allegations, Your Honor, unproven, and save it. Miss Chang, I assume you have a response? Chang rose smoothly. Your Honor, this petition is a transparent attempt by Mr. Torano to maintain control of assets he fraudulently obtained through a prenuptial agreement signed under false pretenses. Miss Hart is a competent adult who has made the entirely rational decision to terminate her relationship with a man who betrayed her and seek legal recourse for his theft. Theft is a strong word, Ashford interjected. It's also accurate. We have documentation showing Mr. Torano withdrew over $7 million from Miss Hart's trust fund, using it as collateral for construction loans that benefited only him. The prenuptial agreement that supposedly gave him this authority was signed before any engagement announcement, making its legal standing questionable at best, fraudulent at worst. Judge Reeves leaned back. Mr. Ashford, you want to explain to me how your client had authority over Miss Hart's finances before they were even engaged? The agreement was a standard financial planning document, Your Honor. Miss Hart's father, as trustee, signed off on the arrangement to ensure proper management of. Her father signed away her money to a man she wasn't even dating yet? The judge's eyebrows rose. That's not financial planning. That's selling your daughter. The courtroom went silent. Lena felt something fierce and hot rise in her chest. Vindication, maybe? Or just the relief of someone finally saying the truth out loud. Ashford recovered quickly. Your Honor, Mr. Hart's intentions were to protect his daughter's interests. The Toronto family has extensive business connections that would have benefited. I don't care about business connections. I care about the law. Judge Reeves turned to Lena. Miss Hart, I'd like to hear from you directly. Are you currently experiencing any mental health crisis, substance abuse, or other condition that would prevent you from managing your own affairs? Lena stood, her voice steady despite her racing heart. No, Your Honor. Do you want Victor Torano to have any authority over your finances, your medical decisions, or any other aspect of your life? Absolutely not, Your Honor. Then this petition is denied. Judge Reeves brought down her gavel with a crack that felt like thunder. Mr. Torano has no standing to seek guardianship, and frankly, the attempt is offensive. Miss Chang, file for return of all assets Mr. Torano obtained through the prenuptial agreement. I want a full accounting of that trust fund on my desk by Monday. Your Honor, Ashford started. We're done here. Next case. It was over. Just like that, in less than 15 minutes, Victor's last attempt to control Lena had been demolished by a judge who saw through every lie. Lena felt her knees go weak with relief. Morrison gripped her elbow, steadying her. Breathe, you did perfectly. But Lena wasn't looking at Morrison. She was looking at Victor, who'd stood when the judge left and was staring at her across the courtroom with an expression that went beyond anger into something cold and calculating. He said something to Ashford, then turned and walked out of the courtroom with movements that were too controlled, too precise. We should go, Damien said quietly. He'd moved up beside her without Lena noticing. Now. They gathered papers quickly and headed for the door, but Victor was waiting in the hallway. He stood with his back to the windows, backlit by Miami sunshine, looking like the successful businessman he'd pretended to be. Lena. His voice was conversational, almost friendly. We need to talk. We have nothing to say to each other, Lena said, but Morrison put a hand on her arm. Don't engage. Keep walking. They moved past Victor, but he fell into step beside them, matching their pace down the corridor. You're making a mistake. Whatever Damien Crowe told you, whatever lies he's been feeding you. The only lies I heard came from you, Lena said, unable to stop herself. Every time you said you loved me, every promise you made. All lies. I protected you. I gave you a life most women would kill for. Victor's voice hardened. And this is how you repay me? By destroying everything we built together? We didn't build anything. You stole from me and called it love. They'd reached the elevators. Damien pressed the call button, positioning himself between Lena and Victor in a move that looked casual, but wasn't. Stay away from her, Damien said quietly. Victor's smile was sharp as broken glass. Or what? You'll have me arrested? We both know you don't have the evidence to make anything stick. 7 years you've been trying to prove I framed your brother, and you've got nothing. Actually, Chang said pleasantly, we have quite a bit. Witness testimony, financial records, Communications between you and the officers who planted evidence. The U.S. attorney finds it all very compelling. Victor's expression flickered, just for a second, but long enough to show the fear underneath. You're bluffing. Am I? I guess you'll find out Monday when the warrant is issued. Chang smiled. I'd avoid any international travel if I were you. Flight risk tends to eliminate bail as an option. The elevator arrived with a cheerful ding. Lena stepped inside, Morrison and Chang flanking her, Damien standing guard at the door. Victor didn't move, just stood in the hallway watching them with eyes that promised this wasn't over. You'll regret this, he said as the doors began to close. Both of you. I'll make sure. The doors shut, cutting off whatever threat he'd been about to make. Lena let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Is it true? About the arrest warrant? True enough, Chang said. We delivered the evidence to the prosecutor yesterday. They're moving faster than expected because Nico Crow's case gives them federal jurisdiction. Victor will be in custody by Tuesday, maybe sooner. Then it's really over. Lena felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back. I'm free. Almost free, Morrison corrected gently. We still need to recover your trust fund, and Victor's going to fight that every step of the way. But the hard part's done. You stood up to him and won. The elevator reached the ground floor, and they emerged into a lobby that felt too bright, too normal for everything that had just happened. Lena wanted to run, to scream, to do something that matched the relief and terror and vindication coursing through her veins. Instead, she walked calmly to the waiting cars, smiled politely for the cameras that were still flashing, and let Damien guide her into the Mercedes with a hand that was warm and steady against her back. They were 3 blocks from the courthouse when the first SUV appeared. It came out of a side street fast, black with tinted windows, and fell in behind them with the kind of precision that said professional driver. Damien noticed it immediately, his posture shifting from relaxed to alert in a heartbeat. We've got a tail, he said to the driver. I see it. The driver, Marcus, Lena remembered, adjusted the rearview mirror. Want me to lose them? Not yet. Let's see what they do. A second SUV appeared from another side street, boxing them in from the front. Marcus swore quietly and reached for something under his seat. Damien, Lena said, hearing her voice shake. What's happening? Victor's making his move. Hold on. The SUV in front slammed on its brakes. Marcus swerved, but the street was too narrow, traffic too heavy. They came to a stop boxed in on both sides, pedestrians scattering as doors opened and men poured out. 4 men, maybe 5, all wearing dark suits and moving with military precision. They surrounded the Mercedes in seconds, and the one closest to Damien's window tapped on the glass with something metal that might have been a gun. Step out of the car, Mr. Crow. Miss Hart. Nice and slow. Damien's hand found Lena's, squeezed once. Do what they say. Stay calm. Security team is 2 minutes behind us. That's 2 minutes too long, Lena whispered, but she was already unbuckling her seatbelt. They stepped out into Miami sunshine that suddenly felt hostile. The men moved to surround them, and Lena recognized the lead man from somewhere. Victor's security detail, maybe, or one of the contractors who'd hung around the wedding planning meetings. Miss Hart, Mr. Toronto would like a word with you, the man said politely, as if he wasn't currently kidnapping them in broad daylight. Tell Mr. Toronto to make an appointment, Damien said coldly. This isn't a request. A gun appeared, held low and casual, pointed at Damien's chest. Lena felt her breath stop. This was insane. They were in downtown Miami, surrounded by buildings full of lawyers and judges and people who could see exactly what was happening. Victor couldn't possibly think he'd get away with this, except apparently he did. Your car or ours? The man asked. Either way, you're coming with us. Damien looked at Lena, calculation flickering in his eyes. She could see him weighing options, measuring distances, trying to find the move that kept her safe. But there were too many guns, too many men, and civilian cars were stopped all around them with people inside who could get caught in crossfire. We'll go, Damien said, but only to talk. You hurt her, and there's nowhere Victor can hide. Mr. Toronto doesn't want to hurt anyone. He just wants a conversation. They were herded into one of the SUVs, Lena and Damien in the back, 2 armed men on either side, the remainder following in the second vehicle. The Mercedes was left blocking traffic, Marcus shouting into his phone, probably calling the security team that was going to arrive too late. The SUV pulled into traffic smoothly, heading north toward the waterfront. Lena's mind raced through options and found none that didn't end with someone getting shot. Damien sat perfectly still beside her, but she could feel the tension radiating off him like heat. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Mr. Toronto's office. He has a proposal for you." "I'm not interested in proposals from men who kidnap people." The guard smiled without humor. "You might want to hear this one. It concerns your sister." Lena's stomach dropped. "What about Sophia?" "You'll see." They drove in silence through streets Lena knew by heart, past the Performing Arts Center, along the bay, into the financial district where glass towers reflected endless blue sky. Victor's office was in one of the newer buildings, all steel and prestige, with his name on the directory in letters that screamed success. The SUV pulled into an underground garage, away from witnesses and security cameras that might have captured this crime in progress. They were escorted to a private elevator that required a keycard, rode up in silence that felt like pressure building before an explosion. The doors opened directly into Victor's penthouse office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Biscayne Bay. Expensive art hung on walls painted the color of money, and behind a desk the size of a small car sat Victor Toronto, looking perfectly composed despite the fact that he'd just committed felony kidnapping. "Thank you, gentlemen," he said to the guards. "Wait outside." "Sir, are you sure?" "Outside." Victor's voice carried the kind of authority that came from years of having men with guns do exactly what he said. The guards left, closing the door behind them. Lena and Damien stood in front of the desk like students called to the principal's office. Victor studied them for a long moment, then stood and moved to the windows, hands in his pockets, the picture of casual power. "I'm going to make this very simple," he said, without turning around. "Lena, you're going to drop all charges, tell the judge you made a mistake about the trust fund, and publicly announce that our breakup was mutual and amicable. You're going to smile for the cameras and thank me for being so understanding. And if I don't?" Lena's voice was steadier than she felt. Victor turned, and his smile was the coldest thing Lena had ever seen. "Then Sophia has a tragic accident. Pregnant women are so fragile, you know. Falls downstairs, car accidents, terrible things that happen to careless people." The room tilted. Lena grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "You're threatening your own child." "I'm threatening the leverage I have over you. Whether that child ever gets born depends entirely on your cooperation." Victor moved back to his desk, picked up a folder. "I've drafted a statement for you to sign. You'll read it at a press conference this afternoon. Damien, you'll stand beside her and confirm that you were simply offering friendly support during a difficult time. No conspiracy, no evidence tampering, no vendetta." "You're insane," Damien said flatly. "You really think you can kidnap us, threaten murder, and we'll just cooperate?" "I think you'll weigh my sister's life against your revenge and make the obvious choice," Victor said, looking at Lena. "Unless you care more about hurting me than saving her." Lena's mind was racing. Sophia had betrayed her, destroyed her wedding, stolen the man Lena had thought she'd loved. But Sophia was still her sister, still carrying a child who had no say in any of this. Could Lena really let an innocent baby die just to see Victor punished? "How do I know you won't hurt her anyway?" she asked. "Even if I do what you want?" "You don't. But you know for certain what happens if you refuse." Victor slid the folder across the desk. "Sign it, Lena. Be smart for once in your life." Damien's hand found hers under the table, squeezed hard enough to hurt. She glanced at him and saw fury in his eyes, but also calculation. He was trying to tell her something, trying to communicate without words. "Trust me," his expression said. "Play along." Lena picked up the folder with shaking hands, opened it, scanned the statement Victor had prepared. It was comprehensive in its lies. She was emotionally unstable. Damien had taken advantage of her vulnerable state. Victor had only ever wanted what was best for her. Reading it made her feel sick. "I need to see Sophia first," she said. "I need to know she's okay before I sign anything." "Not possible." "Then no deal." Lena closed the folder. "You want me to sacrifice everything to save her? Prove she's actually in danger. Let me talk to her." Victor's jaw tightened. "You're not in a position to negotiate." "Neither are you. The prosecutor has enough evidence to arrest you whether I cooperate or not. The judge already ruled against your guardianship petition. Your construction loans are underwater and due in 6 weeks. You're desperate, Victor, and desperate men make mistakes. Lena leaned forward. Let me see Sophia. Then we'll talk about cooperation. For a long moment, Victor just stared at her. Then he pulled out his phone, dialed a number. Bring her up, he said. The wait felt eternal. Lena counted her heartbeats, tried to steady her breathing, tried not to think about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. Damien stood perfectly still beside her, but she could feel the violence coiled in him, waiting for the right moment to strike. The door opened and Sophia walked in. She looked terrible, pale and thin despite the supposed pregnancy, dark circles under eyes that wouldn't quite meet Lena's. She wore a loose dress that could have been hiding anything, and she moved like someone who'd forgotten how to take up space. Sophia, Lena breathed. Her sister's eyes finally met hers, and Lena saw terror there. Real, genuine fear that made her earlier anger feel petty and small. I'm sorry, Sophia whispered. Lena, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he would— Quiet. Victor's voice cracked like a whip. Lena wanted proof you're alive. There's your proof. Now sign the statement. But Lena was staring at her sister, reading the truth in every line of her body. You're not really pregnant, are you? Sophia's silence was answer enough. Another lie, Lena said, almost admiringly. You told our father you were pregnant to keep him loyal to Victor, but it was always a lie. Smart girl, Victor said. But it doesn't change anything. Sophia's life is still on the line, pregnant or not. Let her go, Lena said. Let Sophia walk out of here right now, and I'll sign whatever you want. Lena, no, Damien started. Let her go, Victor. She's useless to you anyway. The fake pregnancy won't keep our father in line once he knows the truth. She's just dead weight. Victor considered this, weighing his options. Fine. Sophia can leave, but you stay until the press conference is done and every camera in Miami has seen you read that statement. Then you're free to go back to your pathetic little revenge fantasy. Deal, Lena turned to her sister. Go, right now. Don't look back. Sophia's eyes were swimming with tears. I never meant for it to go this far. I know what you wanted. Go before he changes his mind. Sophia ran. Actually ran for the door, yanked it open, and disappeared into the hallway beyond. Lena heard her footsteps echoing, fading, gone. One person safe. One small victory. Victor picked up his phone again. Prep the conference room. We're going live in 20 minutes. He looked at Lena. You're going to be very convincing, very grateful, very apologetic. Any deviation from the script, and Damien Crowe becomes the next person to have an unfortunate accident. Understood? Understood, Lena said, and picked up the pen. She was halfway through signing her name when the windows exploded. Glass shattered inward in a spray of diamond fragments, and something metal came flying through, smoke grenades. Lena's brain supplied distantly, even as Damien was tackling her to the floor. Smoke filled the office instantly, thick and choking, and someone was yelling orders in the hallway. Gunshots cracked the air. Lena felt Damien covering her body with his, felt the floor shake with the impact of boots, heard Victor shouting something that got cut off mid-word. Then hands were pulling her up. Someone familiar was saying her name, and she recognized Nico Crow's voice cutting through the chaos. Got them! South window! Rappel down! Move! Move! Lena was hauled toward the broken window, saw a rope hanging there impossibly, felt a harness being buckled around her waist by hands that worked with military efficiency. Nico's face appeared through the smoke, grim and focused. Hold tight and don't look down, he said, and then she was going over the edge. The descent was nightmare and miracle combined. 30 floors of empty air beneath her feet, rope burning through a friction device, wind whipping her hair into her eyes. Someone was descending beside her, controlling her speed, keeping her from falling. Damien, she realized. Of course it was Damien. They reached the ground in seconds that felt like hours. A van was waiting, back doors open, and they were being pulled inside by more men in tactical gear who moved with the precision of a SWAT team. Nico appeared last, having rappelled down after them and slammed the doors shut. The van was already moving before Lena could process what had happened. What? How? She started. Security team tracked your phone, Nico said, stripping off his tactical vest. Soon as Marcus called in the kidnapping, we mobilized. Took us 20 minutes to get into position. Sorry it took so long. You blew up Victor's office, Lena said stupidly. Smoke grenades only. No actual explosives, though I was tempted. Nico's smile was fierce. Victor's security team surrendered the second we breached. Turns out they're not actually willing to die for a boss who's about to be indicted. Damien was checking Lena over for injuries, hands gentle but thorough. You okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine. Sophia, did you see where she went? She's safe. Our team picked her up in the lobby. She's already giving a statement to the police about Victor's threats. Nico pulled out his phone, showed her a text. Your sister might have betrayed you, but she's not suicidal. Soon as she was clear, she told us everything. Lena sagged against the van wall, adrenaline draining and leaving exhaustion in its wake. It's really over? Not quite. Damien's voice was grim. Victor's probably already running. We need to make sure the police get to him before he makes it to the airport. But even as he spoke, Nico's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his smile spread slow and satisfied. Police just picked up Victor trying to board a private plane to the Caymans. He's in custody. Federal marshals are en route to take him into federal jurisdiction for the Nico Crow case. He looked at his brother. It's over, Damien. We won. The van went silent except for the rumble of the engine and Miami traffic flowing past outside. Lena looked at Damien, saw 7 years of pain and fury and determination finally releasing its grip on his features. He looked younger suddenly, or maybe just less haunted. Your brother, he said quietly. Justice for Nico. Justice for everyone Victor hurt, Nico corrected. Including you, Lena. Lena closed her eyes and let the truth of it sink in. Victor was in custody. The trust fund would be returned. The nightmare was actually finally ending. She'd won. They'd won. When she opened her eyes again, Damien was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Relief and something else. Something warmer and more complicated. Thank you, she said, for everything. For believing me, for protecting me, for... Don't. His voice was rough. You saved yourself, Lena. I just provided the resources. You provided a lot more than that. The van pulled up to Damien's estate, and they climbed out into afternoon sunshine that felt surreal after the chaos. Elena was waiting at the door, and she pulled Lena into a hug that felt maternal and safe. The lawyers called, she said. Judge Reeves issued an emergency order freezing all of Victor's assets pending the criminal investigation. Your trust fund is protected. Another weight lifted. Lena felt tears finally come, relief and exhaustion and residual terror, all mixing together. Elena just held her and made soothing sounds while Damien and Nico handled the security team debrief. Eventually, the tears stopped. Lena pulled back, wiped her eyes, tried to smile. Sorry, I don't usually fall apart like this. After what you've been through, you're entitled. Elena guided her inside. Come on, hot bath, good meal, and sleep. Everything else can wait until tomorrow. But before Lena could follow, Damien's hand caught her arm. Lena, there's something you should know. She turned, saw something vulnerable in his expression. What? The evidence against Victor, the witnesses, the financial records. Most of that came from your father. Lena stared. My father helped you? After your meeting at the yacht club, he contacted Morrison directly. Provided documentation we didn't even know existed. Testimony about deals that went back years. He's the reason the prosecutor moved so fast. Damien's voice was careful. I don't know if he did it to save himself or because he actually felt guilty, but without his cooperation, Victor might have stayed free long enough to hurt you. Lena didn't know how to feel about that. Her father was still a coward who'd sold her for business advantage. But apparently he was a coward with limits, someone who'd chosen his daughter over his partner when push finally came to shove. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even close. But it was something. I'll deal with him later, she said. Right now I just want to sleep for about a week. Damien's smile was gentle. That can be arranged. Lena let Elena lead her upstairs, let the older woman run a bath, and lay out clean clothes and generally mother her in a way her own mother never had the chance to. The hot water soaked away the last of the adrenaline, and by the time Lena climbed into bed, she was already halfway to unconsciousness. She woke to darkness and the sound of waves, disoriented until memory returned in a rush. Victor arrested. Trust fund safe. Nightmare over. She'd checked her phone. 2 in the morning. Messages from Morrison confirming that Victor's bail had been denied and he'd be transferred to federal custody in the morning. Lena should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt hollow, scraped clean, uncertain what came next now that revenge was no longer her guiding star. She found herself walking downstairs, drawn by light from the study. Damien was there, still dressed from earlier, staring at documents spread across his desk with an expression she recognized, the look of someone who'd won the war but didn't know what to do with peace. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway. "Can't sleep? Slept enough? Too much, maybe?" Lena moved into the room. "You should rest, too." Soon. But he didn't move, just watched her with those storm cloud eyes. "Nico got justice," Lena said. "You kept your promise to him. 7 years late." "Better late than never." Damien's smile was tired. "You sound like Elena." They stood in comfortable silence, the kind that had developed between them over days that felt like years. Lena thought about everything that had happened since she'd sat on those cathedral steps, how much had changed, how far she'd come. "What happens now?" she asked. "For you, I mean, now that Victor's finished." "Honestly, I don't know. I've spent so long focused on destroying him that I never thought about what came after." Damien ran a hand through his hair. "Build more buildings, I suppose. Live my life, try to remember what that looks like when it's not consumed by revenge." "Sounds lonely." "It is." He met her eyes. "But necessary. Men like me, we're not built for normal relationships. Too much baggage, too many enemies. That's a convenient excuse. It's a true one." Lena moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. "What if I don't want normal? What if I want complicated and messy and real?" "Lena." Her name was a warning and a plea. "You just got out of one relationship with a dangerous man. Don't walk into another. You're nothing like Victor. No, I'm worse in some ways. I've done things, hurt people, made choices that can't be unmade. You deserve better than that." "Stop telling me what I deserve," Lena said fiercely. "I've had enough men making decisions for me. I'm asking what you want." Damien looked at her for a long moment, something breaking in his expression. "I want you to be happy. I want you to be safe. I want you to have the life Victor tried to steal. And if that life includes you, then I'd be the luckiest bastard in Miami." His voice was raw, honest. "But I won't trap you into something just because we survived a crisis together. You need time to figure out who you are when you're not running or fighting, and I need to do the same." It hurt, but Lena recognized the wisdom in it. They were both people defined by trauma and revenge, and building something real required knowing who they were beneath that. Rushing into whatever this was between them would be repeating old mistakes with new faces. "So we wait," she said. "We wait. We heal. We figure out who we are separately." Damien's hand found hers, warm and solid. "And if in 6 months or a year you still feel this way, and I still feel this way, we'll talk about what comes next." Lena squeezed his hand, feeling tears prick her eyes again. "That's very mature and reasonable, and I hate it." His laugh was surprised and genuine. "Me too, but it's right." "I know." She stood on tiptoe and kissed his cheek, soft and brief. "Thank you, Damien. For everything. For seeing me when everyone else looked through me. For making me feel strong instead of broken. You were always strong. You just needed reminding." Lena left him there in the study, walked back upstairs, and climbed into bed with a heart that ached but felt strangely whole. She'd lost her fiancé, her sister's loyalty, her father's respect. But she'd gained something infinitely more valuable. Her own strength, her own voice, her own life that she'd chosen instead of accepting what others decided for her. And someday, maybe, she'd gain something more. Someone who saw her not as property or weapon or prize, but as an equal partner in building something real. But first, she had to figure out who Lena Hart actually was. And that journey started tomorrow. Tomorrow came with purpose Lena hadn't felt in months. She woke to sunlight streaming through windows that no longer felt like a fortress, dressed in clothes that were hers instead of borrowed, and went downstairs to find Morrison and Chang already waiting in the dining room with paperwork that would officially end Victor's control over her life. The trust fund audit came back, Morrison said, sliding a folder across the table. Victor withdrew $7.2 million over 6 months. He used it as collateral for construction loans totaling $43 million. When those projects collapsed, the bank seized the collateral. Lena felt her stomach drop. So the money's gone. Most of it, but Victor also has assets, properties, company shares, offshore accounts we're still tracking down. Judge Reeves issued an order for full restitution. It'll take time, but you'll get it back. Chang's smile was sharp. And Victor will spend the next decade in federal prison watching his empire get dismantled piece by piece to pay what he owes you. How long until the criminal trial? 6 months, maybe 8. The prosecutor's building a comprehensive case. The fraud against you, the frame job on Nico Crow, conspiracy, money laundering. Victor's looking at 20 to 30 years minimum. Morrison tapped the papers. But that's not why we're here this morning. We need to discuss your father. The shift in topic felt like whiplash. What about him? Richard Hart has been cooperating fully with federal investigators. He's provided documentation, testimony, access to Hart Development's complete financial records. In exchange, the prosecutor is offering immunity from prosecution. Morrison's expression was carefully neutral. We wanted to make sure you're comfortable with that arrangement before we finalize it. Lena stared at the papers without seeing them. Her father had sold her for a business deal, signed away her money to a criminal, chose Victor over his own daughter. And now he'd get to walk away clean while Victor rotted in prison. It wasn't fair, it wasn't justice, but it was smart. If my father testifies, Victor's conviction is guaranteed, she said slowly. Essentially, yes, Richard was involved in enough deals to corroborate the prosecution's timeline. His testimony makes the case airtight. And if we refuse the immunity deal? Chang leaned forward. Then Richard gets his own lawyer, probably fights the charges, drags everything out in court for years. Meanwhile, Victor's defense team uses the delay to chip away at the case. We might still win, but it becomes messier, longer, more expensive. So we need him. We don't need him, but having him makes everything cleaner. Morrison's voice was gentle. This is your call, Lena. We'll support whatever you decide. Lena thought about her father's face at the yacht club, the fear in his eyes when she'd threatened to destroy him. She thought about all the times he'd chosen business over family, all the ways he'd failed to protect her when that should have been his most basic obligation. She also thought about Nico, who'd lost 5 years to Victor's lies. About every other person Victor had hurt or would hurt if he ever got free. About justice that was bigger than her personal vendetta. Give him immunity, she said, but I want something in return. What kind of something? I want Hart Development. Not the whole company, just controlling interest. Enough that my father can never make another major decision without my approval. Lena met Morrison's eyes. He sold me once. I'm making sure he never has the power to sell anyone else. Morrison's smile was slow and approving. I think we can arrange that. Your father's desperate enough to agree to almost anything at this point. The meeting with Richard Hart happened that afternoon in Morrison's office. Neutral territory that didn't carry the weight of family history or betrayal. Lena arrived early, wanting to see her father's face when he walked in and found her sitting in the power position. Richard looked worse than he had at the yacht club. Thinner, grayer, moving like a man who'd aged a decade in a week. His lawyer was with him, a nervous young woman who kept glancing at Morrison like she expected an ambush. Lena, Richard said, attempting a smile that died before it reached his eyes. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Sit down, Daddy. We have a lot to discuss. They sat. Morrison laid out the immunity deal in language that was precise and merciless. Richard would testify against Victor, provide all relevant documentation, and cooperate fully with federal investigators. In exchange, he'd avoid prosecution for his role in Victor's schemes. There's one additional term, Morrison added. Lena will receive 51% ownership of Hart Development, effective immediately. You'll retain your position as CEO, but all major decisions require her approval. Richard's face went white. You're taking my company. I'm ensuring you can't use it to hurt people again, Lena corrected. You'll still run day-to-day operations. You'll still draw your salary. But you'll never again have the authority to sell someone's future for a construction contract. That's not fair. I built that company from nothing, spent 40 years. You spent 40 years making deals with criminals and calling it business. Lena's voice was cold. You signed away my trust fund to a man who was framing innocent people. You knew Victor was dirty, and you didn't care as long as you profited. So no, Daddy, you don't get to lecture me about fair. Richard looked at his lawyer, who shrugged helplessly. The alternative is federal prosecution, Mr. Hart. Conspiracy charges, fraud, possibly RICO if they can prove ongoing criminal enterprise. You're looking at 20 years minimum. So I give up my company or go to prison. You give up control of your company, Morrison corrected. Lena's not kicking you out. She's just making sure you have adult supervision going forward. The insult landed hard. Richard flinched, then seemed to deflate entirely. Fine. I'll sign whatever you want. One more thing, Lena said. Sophia. Her father's expression shifted to something almost human, worry, maybe, or the closest he could come to parental concern. What about her? She's not pregnant. She never was. She lied to keep you loyal to Victor. Lena watched realization dawn on her father's face. But Victor threatened her life anyway. He would have killed her to control me. That's the kind of man you chose as a business partner. Richard was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Is she safe? For now. She's staying with friends, giving statements to the police. But she's going to need support, Daddy. Therapy, probably. A family that actually gives a damn about her instead of just using her. Lena leaned forward. Can you be that for her? Can you be the father she needs instead of the businessman she's useful to? I don't know. The admission sounded like it cost him. I don't know if I know how. Then learn, because if you hurt her the way you hurt me, if you make her feel worthless or expendable one more time, I'll use my controlling interest to vote you out of your own company. That's not a threat, Daddy. It's a promise. Richard met her eyes and seemed to see her for the first time, not as a daughter to be managed or an asset to be leveraged, but as a woman who'd survived his failures and come out stronger. You're like your mother, he said quietly. She would have been proud of you. She would have been ashamed of you. Lena stood. Sign the papers, testify against Victor, and maybe, if you work very hard at being decent, we can eventually have some kind of relationship. But it starts with you earning it. She walked out before he could respond, before the tears that were threatening could actually fall. Morrison caught up with her in the hallway, handed her a tissue she hadn't realized she needed. That was brutal and necessary, the lawyer said. Well done. I don't feel good about it. You're not supposed to. That's what makes you better than him. Morrison squeezed her shoulder. Go home. Rest. Let us handle the paperwork. By Monday, Heart Development will be yours and Victor will be in federal custody. You can start figuring out what comes next. Lena drove back to Damien's estate through Miami traffic that felt surreal in its normalcy. People going about their lives, completely unaware that hers had just been reconstructed from the ground up. She'd taken her father's company, secured Victor's conviction, and ensured Sophia had a chance at a real future. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt exhausted. The estate was quiet when she arrived. Elena met her at the door with the kind of knowing look that suggested she'd been watching for Lena's return. Mr. Crow is in the library. He asked to speak with you when you got back. Lena found him surrounded by architectural plans, studying blueprints with the focus she'd come to recognize as his planning mode. He looked up when she entered, set aside the drawings. How did it go with your father? He signed. I own controlling interest in Heart Development as of this afternoon. Lena sank into a chair. I made him choose between prison and losing his company. Some daughter I turned out to be. Some daughter you had to become, Damien corrected. He made his choices, Lena. You're just making sure he lives with the consequences. Is that what you told yourself? About Victor? Damien was quiet for a moment. Every day for 7 years? And you know what? I was right. Victor deserved everything he got and more. Just like your father deserves to lose the power he abused. Lena studied the blueprints spread across the table. What are you planning? A new project. Mixed-use development, affordable housing component, exactly what Victor tried to kill. Damien's finger traced a line through the drawings. We break ground in 3 months. It'll take 2 years to complete, employ about 300 people, and provide housing for families who can't afford Miami's insane real estate prices. That's good. Important work. It's also happening in a neighborhood where Hart Development owns significant property. Damien met her eyes. I was going to approach your father about a partnership, but given the circumstances, I thought I should talk to you instead. Understanding dawned. You want to use Hart Development's land for your project. I want to collaborate on something that actually helps people instead of just lining pockets. Your company has the property and the city connections. I have the financing and the construction expertise. Together, we could build something meaningful. It was an olive branch wrapped in a business proposal, a way for Lena to transform her father's company into something better while working alongside Damien without the complication of romance. Smart, practical, and exactly what they both needed. Tell me more, Lena said, pulling up a chair. They spent the next 3 hours deep in plans and possibilities, talking about affordable units and community spaces, about green building standards and local hiring requirements. Damien explained the economics, and Lena found herself understanding more than she expected. Her business degree hadn't been useless after all, just misapplied to Victor's schemes. This could actually work, she said finally, but I'll need to run it past the Hart Development Board, get their approval for the partnership. Your board answers to you now. You have controlling interest. I know, but I want them to buy in willingly, to choose this project because it's right, not because I'm forcing it. Lena smiled slightly. Apparently I'm more democratic than my father. Apparently you're nothing like your father, which is the highest compliment I can give you. Elena appeared in the doorway. Dinner's ready, and Miss Hart, you have a visitor. Your sister is here. The announcement landed like a stone in still water. Lena exchanged glances with Damien, who rose immediately. Want me to stay? He asked quietly. No, this is something I need to handle alone. But Lena appreciated the offer, the implicit promise that he'd be there if she needed backup. Sophia waited in the sitting room, perched on the edge of a sofa like she might bolt at any moment. She looked fragile in a way Lena had never seen. No makeup, hair pulled back carelessly, wearing jeans and a sweater that looked borrowed. She stood when Lena entered, hands twisting together nervously. I know I have no right to be here, Sophia said before Lena could speak. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I needed to tell you the truth, all of it, before you hear some sanitized version from lawyers. I'm listening. Sophia took a shaky breath. I slept with Victor because I was jealous. You were always the good daughter, the one Daddy was proud of, the one who got the trust fund and the perfect fiancé. I wanted to take something from you the way I felt like you'd taken everything from me. I never took anything from you. I know that now. But at the time I was so angry, so convinced that you had this perfect life I deserved instead. So when Victor started paying attention to me, when he told me I was special and beautiful and smarter than you'd ever be, I believed him. Sophia's voice cracked. I believed every lie because I wanted them to be true. Lena felt something soften in her chest, just slightly. He used you. He used both of us. But you were smart enough to see through it. I wasn't. Sophia sank back onto the sofa. The pregnancy lie was his idea. He needed Daddy's loyalty, and threatening an unborn grandchild was the perfect leverage. I went along with it because I was terrified of what he'd do if I refused. He threatened you. He owned me. By the time I realized what kind of man he really was, I was in too deep to escape. When you walked away from that wedding, I was so envious I could barely breathe. You were brave enough to leave. I wasn't. Lena sat down across from her sister, seeing Sophia clearly for maybe the first time. Not a rival or a betrayer, but a victim who'd made terrible choices and was drowning in the consequences. What do you want from me? Lena asked. Nothing. I don't deserve anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly and completely sorry, for everything I did. And I wanted to tell you that when the prosecutor asks me to testify against Victor, I'm going to tell them everything. Every crime I witnessed, every threat he made, every person he hurt. I can't undo what I did to you, but I can make sure he pays for it. That's going to destroy you in the press. They'll call you a scorned mistress, a liar, worse things. I know, but it's the right thing to do. Sophia met her eyes, and Lena saw genuine remorse there. I spent 6 months being the kind of person who sleeps with her sister's fiancé. I don't want to be that person anymore. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of competition and resentment that were finally being acknowledged. Lena thought about forgiveness, about whether she was capable of it, whether Sophia even deserved it. "I can't forgive you," she said finally. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did hurt too much. I understand. But I don't hate you either. And I think maybe eventually we could build something new. Not what we had before, but something honest." Lena leaned forward. "Daddy's going to need support through the trial. He's a coward and a terrible father, but he's still our father. Can you be there for him?" "You're not?" "I'll be there in an official capacity, as the new majority owner of Heart Development, as the victim testifying against Victor. But I can't be his daughter right now. That relationship needs to be rebuilt from the ground up." Lena's voice was steady. "You could help with that. Be the bridge between us while we both figure out how to be family again." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you being kind to me? After everything I did?" "Because you're my sister. Because we're both victims of the same man, just in different ways. And because holding on to anger forever sounds exhausting." Lena stood. "But Sophia, if you ever betray me again, if you ever choose a man over family loyalty, we're done. No second chances, no rebuilding, just done." "I understand. And Lena?" Sophia stood too. "Thank you for being better than I deserve." She left quietly, and Lena stood alone in the sitting room feeling something she hadn't expected. Hope. Not that everything would be perfect, but that maybe, eventually, the broken pieces could be rearranged into something whole, even if it looked different than before. The next week passed in a blur of legal proceedings and business meetings. Victor was formally arraigned on 17 federal charges and remanded without bail. Richard Hart testified before a grand jury and looked 10 years older when he emerged. Morrison and Chang filed the final paperwork transferring control of Hart Development to Lena, making her one of the youngest majority owners of a major construction firm in Miami. And through it all, Damien worked alongside her, not as a romantic interest, but as a partner in building something that mattered. They met with architects and city planners, with community leaders and potential investors. The affordable housing project grew from blueprints to actual possibility, something tangible and real that would exist long after the revenge was forgotten. Lena found herself enjoying the work in a way she'd never enjoyed anything Victor had involved her in. This was creation instead of destruction, building instead of tearing down. She had opinions about unit layouts and green spaces, about childcare facilities and public transportation access. And people listened to her, treated her ideas as valuable instead of decorative. She was becoming someone new, someone who'd survived betrayal and come out stronger, who'd taken her father's company and redirected it toward actual good, who'd looked at the man who destroyed her wedding and refused to let that define her future. 2 weeks after Victor's arrest, Lena stood in the Hart Development boardroom presenting the Affordable Housing Partnership to executives who'd worked with her father for decades. She laid out the financials, the community benefits, the long-term value of building goodwill instead of just profit margins. "This is a significant departure from our usual projects," the CFO said carefully. "Mr. Hart Sr. typically focused on luxury development. Mr. Hart Sr. also typically colluded with criminals and nearly destroyed the company through his association with Victor Torano," Lena said pleasantly. "I'm proposing we try a different approach, one that's both profitable and ethical." The boardroom went silent. Then the CFO smiled slightly. "Point taken, Miss Hart. I move we approve the partnership with Crow Enterprises." The vote was unanimous. Lena called Damien immediately after the meeting. "We're approved. Construction can start as scheduled." "That's excellent news. We should celebrate." "Dinner tonight? Somewhere public and absolutely not romantic?" His laugh was warm through the phone. "I know just the place." They met at a restaurant on the waterfront, casual, noisy, packed with families and tourists who had no idea they were dining near Miami's newest power partnership. Damien ordered wine, and Lena found herself actually relaxing for the first time in weeks. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Being a business mogul?" "Terrifying, exhilarating, like I'm finally doing something that matters instead of just existing to make men happy." Lena sipped her wine. "Your brother stopped by the office yesterday." "Nico, what did he want?" "To thank me for helping bring Victor down, for giving him closure." Lena smiled. "He said knowing Victor would spend decades in prison makes the 5 years he lost almost worth it." Damien's expression softened. "He's healing, slowly, but he's getting there. Having a purpose again helps. He's going to manage community outreach for the affordable housing project. That's perfect for him. It is. And Lena, it's because of you. You gave both of us something we'd lost, faith that justice is actually possible. I didn't do it alone. No. But you started it. That night on the cathedral steps, you could have given up, disappeared, let Victor win. Instead, you fought back. That took courage. I'm not sure I could have managed in your position. Lena felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the wine. You would have. You spent 7 years fighting for Nico. That's the definition of courage. They talked through dinner about the project, about Lena's plans for heart development, about Nico's progress, and Sophia's testimony preparation. Safe topics that didn't stray into dangerous territory, that kept them firmly in the friend zone they'd both agreed was necessary. But when Damien walked her to her car, she'd moved into her own apartment the week before, needing space to figure out who she was outside Damien's protection. He caught her hand before she could unlock the door. Lena, I need to tell you something. Her heart jumped. What? These past 3 weeks, working with you, watching you transform your father's company into something good, seeing you become the person you were always meant to be. He stopped, seemed to be choosing words carefully. I'm finding it very difficult to maintain appropriate professional distance. Me too, Lena admitted. We said we'd wait, give ourselves time to heal, to figure out who we are separately. We did say that. But I'm wondering if maybe we were wrong. If maybe healing doesn't have to mean being apart. Damien's thumb traced circles on her palm. I'm not proposing anything serious, just the possibility that we could explore this, whatever this is, while still maintaining our own lives and identities. Lena felt herself smiling. Are you asking me on an actual date, Damien Crow? I'm suggesting we acknowledge that there's something between us worth investigating. Slowly, carefully, with full awareness that we're both still recovering from trauma. His smile was crooked. So yes, I'm asking you on a date. Then yes, I accept, but on one condition. What condition? We keep it separate from the business partnership. Heart Development and Crow Enterprises work together regardless of whether we're dating, friends, or strangers. The project is bigger than us. Agreed. The project comes first. Damien pulled her closer, just slightly. But right now, I'd like permission to kiss you, if that's something you'd want. Lena answered by closing the distance between them. The kiss was nothing like the ones Victor had given her. Those had been claiming, possessive, about control. This was question and answer, give and take, two people meeting as equals. Damien's hand cupped her face gently, and Lena felt herself melting into warmth that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Damien rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the night I found you on those steps. You hit it well. Years of practice maintaining a poker face in business negotiations. He smiled. But Lena, I meant what I said. We go slow. No rushing, no assuming this is forever. Just taking it one day at a time and seeing where it leads. That sounds perfect. She drove home feeling lighter than she had in months, maybe years. The apartment she'd rented was small but hers, 1 bedroom in Coconut Grove, with a balcony overlooking trees instead of the bay. It wasn't Damien's estate or her father's mansion or the home she'd expected to share with Victor. It was just hers, and that made it perfect. The following Monday brought news that changed everything one final time. Morrison called just as Lena was heading into a heart development meeting. Victor's lawyer reached out. He wants to make a deal. Lena felt her stomach drop. What kind of deal? Full confession to all charges, testimony against everyone he worked with, complete restitution of your trust fund, and damages. In exchange, he wants a reduced sentence, 15 years instead of 30. Why would he confess now? The trial hasn't even started. Because the evidence is overwhelming, and his lawyer knows it. Every witness is cooperating. Every document has been verified. He's going to be convicted, and he knows it. This way, he at least gets some control over the outcome. Morrison paused. The prosecutor wants to know if you're willing to support the deal. Lena thought about Victor in prison for 15 years versus 30. She thought about Nico's lost 5 years, about Sophia's terror, about her own humiliation. 15 years didn't seem like enough, but 30 years wouldn't undo any of it either. What does the prosecutor recommend? Take the deal. Full confession means we can go after everyone else in Victor's network. Corrupt officials, dirty cops, all the people who enabled him. 15 years is still a long time, and Victor will be nearly 60 when he gets out. His empire will be gone, his reputation destroyed. He'll have nothing. And my trust fund? Fully recovered with interest. Victor's assets are being liquidated as we speak. Lena closed her eyes, weighing justice against vengeance. Tell them I'll support the deal. But I want one more thing. What? I want to face him one last time, in court, on record. I want to tell him exactly what he took from me and exactly how I survived despite him. Victim impact statement. I can arrange that. Then we have a deal. The hearing happened 2 weeks later in the same courthouse where Judge Reeves had dismissed Victor's guardianship petition. But this time, the courtroom was packed, press in the gallery, federal prosecutors at their table, and Victor in an orange jumpsuit that stripped away every pretense of power. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by circumstances he could no longer control. When his eyes found Lena's across the courtroom, there was no arrogance left, just the hollow recognition of a man who'd finally lost. The judge, a different one, federal this time, reviewed the plea agreement with efficiency. Victor confirmed his understanding, admitted to 17 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and corruption. His voice was flat, mechanical, nothing like the smooth charm Lena remembered. Before sentencing, we'll hear victim impact statements. Miss Hart, you're first. Lena stood and walked to the podium, aware of every eye in the courtroom on her. She'd written and rewritten her statement a dozen times, trying to find words adequate for what Victor had stolen. In the end, she'd realized the truth was enough. Your Honor, when I met Victor Torano, I thought I'd found someone who valued me, someone who saw me as more than my family name or my trust fund. He proposed on a yacht under stars, told me I was the love of his life, made me believe in a future we'd build together. She looked at Victor, who was staring at the table. Every word was a lie. He didn't love me. He couldn't love anyone except himself. He used me to get to my father, used my trust fund to finance his schemes, used my sister to humiliate me when I was no longer useful. He treated me like property, like a thing to be traded and discarded. Victor flinched. But here's what he didn't count on. I survived. I found people who actually valued me, not for what I could give them, but for who I am. I took my father's company and redirected it toward good. I helped bring Victor's crimes to light, ensuring he'd never hurt anyone else the way he hurt me and Nico Crow and countless others. Lena's voice was steady, certain. Victor Torano tried to break me, but he failed. He tried to own me, but I'm not property. I'm a woman who's stronger than he ever imagined, smarter than he gave me credit for, and absolutely done letting him have any power over my life. So, Your Honor, I support this plea agreement not because 15 years is enough. It isn't. But because I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to stop defining myself by what he did to me and start defining myself by what I've built despite him. She turned back to Victor one last time. You're nothing to me now, just a cautionary tale I'll tell when I'm old about the time I almost married a monster and escaped just in time. Enjoy prison, Victor. I hope every single day feels like the eternity you deserve. She returned to her seat in silence so profound it felt sacred. Damien, sitting in the gallery, caught her eye and nodded once. Approval and pride and something deeper. The judge sentenced Victor to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. He'd serve every day of it, and when he emerged, he'd be a ghost of the man who'd tried to destroy Lena Hart. But Lena wouldn't be a ghost. She'd be thriving. After the hearing, after the press conference, and the final meetings with Morrison and Chang, Lena found Damien waiting by his car in the courthouse parking garage. You were magnificent in there, he said. I was honest. Turns out that's more powerful than I realized. Lena Hart, business mogul and truth teller. Miami doesn't know what's about to hit it. She laughed, feeling freer than she'd felt in years. Want to get out of here? Go somewhere that isn't courts or offices, or anywhere we have to be professional? I know a place. They drove south along the coast, past South Beach and its neon excess, past mansions and marinas, until the city thinned into something quieter. Damien pulled off at a small beach access that probably wasn't technically public, but no one seemed to care. They walked on sand still warm from the afternoon sun, waves gentle against the shore, and Lena felt the last of the tension finally leave her shoulders. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. For saving me that night, for helping me fight back, for showing me I could be more than what Victor wanted me to be." "You did that yourself. I just provided resources and moral support." "You provided hope. That's worth more than resources." Damien stopped walking, turned to face her with sunset painting the sky gold and pink behind him. "Lena, I need you to understand something. These past weeks, working with you, seeing you transform pain into purpose, I've fallen for you. Not the broken woman on the cathedral steps, but the powerful woman you've become. The one who takes her father's company and makes it ethical, who faces down criminals in court, who rebuilds her life exactly how she wants it." Lena's heart was pounding. "Damien, I know we said slow. I know we're still healing, but I don't want to waste time pretending I don't feel this. Life's too short and too uncertain." He took her hands. "So I'm asking, clearly and honestly, if you'd be willing to build something with me. Not fast, not reckless, but real and honest and whatever we want it to be." Elena looked at him. This man who'd seen her at her lowest and treated her with dignity, who'd fought beside her without trying to control her, who'd shown her what partnership actually looked like. "Yes," she said simply, "let's build something real." He kissed her as the sun sank into the ocean, and Lena thought about beginnings and endings, about cathedral steps and federal courtrooms, about the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become. She'd started this journey broken and alone, discarded on cold stone by a man who'd never valued her. She was ending it strong and partnered, standing on warm sand with someone who saw exactly who she was and loved her for it. That felt like the best revenge of all. The sunset faded to twilight, and they walked back to the car hand in hand. Something fundamental shifted between them. This wasn't the desperate alliance forged in crisis anymore. It was a choice they were both making with clear eyes and healed hearts, building something new on foundations they'd laid together. The drive back to the city felt different too, quieter in a way that suggested contentment rather than tension. Damien's hand found hers across the console, and Lena laced their fingers together, marveling at how natural it felt. "I should warn you," Damien said as Miami's lights appeared on the horizon, "dating me comes with complications. The business world will have opinions. Some people will say you're using me for connections. Others will say I'm manipulating you for access to heart development. Let them talk. I spent too long caring what people thought." Lena squeezed his hand. "Besides, anyone who knows us knows we're partners first. The business relationship exists independently of whatever this becomes." Speaking of which, Nico called earlier. "The City Council approved the affordable housing project unanimously. We break ground next month." "That's incredible." Lena felt pride swell in her chest. "Your brother must be thrilled." "He is. He's already organizing community meetings, getting input from the families who'll actually live there. It's good seeing him engaged again, purposeful." Damien's voice carried warmth that only appeared when he talked about Nico. "You gave him that. Gave us both closure and a future worth building." "We gave each other that," Lena corrected. "I couldn't have survived Victor without you, and you couldn't have brought him down without the evidence my father provided. We're a team. Best team Miami's seen in a while." They arrived at Lena's apartment building, and Damien walked her to her door like this was an actual date instead of the culmination of weeks of trauma and triumph. He kissed her goodnight with a gentleness that made her heart ache in the best way. "Dinner tomorrow?" he asked. "Somewhere actually romantic this time?" "I'd like that." "But Damien, slow, remember? We're not rushing into anything." "Slow," he agreed, "but deliberate. I'm done pretending I don't want this." "Me too." She watched him drive away, then let herself into an apartment that finally felt like home. Small, simple, hers. She poured a glass of wine and stood on the balcony watching Miami sparkle below, thinking about how far she'd come from those cathedral steps. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia asking if she wanted to meet for coffee tomorrow. Another from Morrison confirming that Victor's assets had been liquidated, and the trust fund would be fully restored by the end of the week. A third from Elena checking if Lena needed anything, the older woman's maternal instincts apparently extending beyond Damien's household. Lena responded to all three, building bridges and maintaining connections, creating a life that was full and real and entirely her own design. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Lena was reviewing contracts for the affordable housing project when her assistant buzzed to say Richard Hart was in the lobby requesting a meeting. Lena considered refusing, sending him away, maintaining the professional distance she'd worked so hard to establish. But curiosity won out. Send him up. Her father looked worse than he had at the immunity hearing, older, more frail, wearing exhaustion like a second skin. He stood in her office doorway, looking uncertain whether to enter. This man who'd once commanded boardrooms with absolute authority, now reduced to asking permission from his daughter. "Thank you for seeing me," Richard said quietly. "You have 10 minutes. Make them count." He sat in the chair across from her desk, hands folded in his lap like a penitent. "I testified yesterday. Final deposition for Victor's case. They asked me to detail every business dealing we had, every time I looked the other way when I should have questioned his methods. And did you?" "I told them everything. Every corrupt deal, every bribe I knew about and ignored, every warning sign I dismissed because the profits were too good." Richard's voice was hollow. "By the time I finished, even my own lawyer looked disgusted." "Good. You should be ashamed." "I am, more than you know." He looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time. "But I didn't come here to make excuses. I came to tell you that I'm stepping down as CEO of Hart Development." Lena felt shock ripple through her. "What?" "You were right. I don't deserve to run that company anymore. I built it on compromises and corruption, and it's time for someone with actual integrity to take over." Richard pulled out an envelope, slid it across the desk. "My formal resignation, effective immediately. The board has already been notified." Lena opened the envelope with shaking hands, scanned the letter. It was real, proper legal language, signatures from witnesses, absolutely binding. "Why now?" she asked. "Because Sophia visited me last week. Told me what Victor did to her, how he threatened and manipulated her, how terrified she was." Richard's voice cracked. "I sold both my daughters to that monster. Sophia for leverage, you for business advantage. What kind of father does that?" "A terrible one." "Yes." He didn't flinch from the truth. "But I'm trying to be better, trying to be the father you both deserved all along. It's too late to undo the damage, but maybe it's not too late to stop causing more." Lena studied her father, seeing genuine remorse for the first time. It didn't erase his failures or heal the wounds he'd inflicted, but it was something. A starting point, maybe. "What will you do?" she asked. "Without the company?" "I don't know. Retire, probably. Spend time with Sophia, help her through therapy, maybe volunteer somewhere, try to give back some of what I've taken." Richard stood. "But mostly, I'll try to stay out of your way while you transform Hart Development into something I never had the courage to build." "Daddy!" The word felt strange after weeks of calling him Richard. "I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But I appreciate this. The resignation, the honesty, the attempt to do better. That's more than I deserve." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Your mother would be so proud of you. The woman you've become, the strength you've shown. I wish I could take credit for any of it, but that's all you. You did that despite me, not because of me." "I know." After he left, Lena sat alone in her office holding her father's resignation letter and feeling the weight of what it meant. She was now the CEO of Hart Development, fully in control of a company that employed 300 people and shaped Miami's skyline. The responsibility was enormous. The opportunity was bigger. She called an emergency board meeting for that afternoon. The executives filed in looking nervous, probably expecting upheaval. Lena let them settle, let the tension build, then stood at the head of the table her father had occupied for 40 years. "As you know, Richard Hart has resigned as CEO. I'm assuming the position effective immediately." She paused, letting that sink in. "And I'm making some changes." The CFO shifted uncomfortably. "What kind of changes, Miss Hart?" "Hart Development has spent decades chasing profit margins at the expense of ethics. We've cut corners, partnered with criminals, and built luxury developments that price out the communities who actually live in this city." Lena pulled up a presentation on the screen. "That ends now. We're pivoting to sustainable, community-focused development. Mixed-use projects, affordable housing components, green building standards, projects that actually improve Miami instead of just extracting wealth from it. The room was silent. Then the head of operations spoke up. That's a significant departure from our business model. The profit margins will be smaller. The profit margins will be sustainable. We'll build slower but better, create developments that last generations instead of flipping properties for quick returns. Lena clicked to the next slide, starting with our partnership with Crow Enterprises on the affordable housing project. That's our proof of concept. We execute that successfully. We prove ethical development can be profitable. And if it fails, the CFO asked, then we learn and adapt. But it won't fail because we're going to staff it with the best people, fund it properly, and treat it like the priority it is. Lena looked around the table. I know this isn't the company you signed up for. If anyone wants to leave, I'll provide excellent references and severance packages. But if you stay, you're committing to building something better than what we've been. The operations head was the first to speak. I'm in. Been wanting to work on projects that actually matter for years, but your father wouldn't hear it. Same, the CFO added. Those luxury condos were profitable, but they were also soulless. I'd rather build something I can be proud of. One by one, every executive at the table committed to the new direction. Lena felt something loosen in her chest. Hope, maybe, or just relief that she wouldn't have to rebuild the entire leadership team from scratch. Then we start tomorrow. Full audit of current projects. Identify which ones align with our new mission and which ones we phase out. It'll take time, but we're building a legacy here, something that lasts. The meeting ended with actual enthusiasm instead of corporate dread. Lena returned to her office and found Damien waiting, leaning against her desk with a smile that suggested he'd heard how the board meeting went. CEO Lena Hart, he said, has a nice ring to it. It's terrifying. I have no idea what I'm doing. You're doing exactly what you did with Victor, refusing to accept the status quo and building something better. You'll be brilliant at it. Damien pulled her close. And you've got a partner who happens to know a lot about construction and development, if you ever need advice. Partner in business and in life? If you'll have me in both capacities. Lena kissed him instead of answering, pouring months of fear and hope and hard-won strength into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, Damien was smiling like a man who'd won the lottery. I'll take that as a yes. The weeks that followed were a blur of transformation. Hart Development announced its new direction to significant press coverage, some positive, some skeptical. Lena gave interviews explaining the pivot, talking about sustainable development and community investment with a passion that won over even the cynical reporters. The affordable housing project broke ground on a warm March morning with half the city council in attendance and community members who'd actually live in the buildings once they were complete. Lena stood beside Damien and Nico watching the first excavator dig into earth, feeling pride that had nothing to do with profit margins. This is what winning actually looks like, Nico said quietly. Not Victor in prison, though that helps. This, building something that helps people. Both can be true, Damien said. Justice and creation aren't mutually exclusive. Sophia appeared at Lena's elbow, tentative but present. She'd been coming to family therapy sessions with Richard, working through decades of dysfunction with a counselor who specialized in high-conflict families. It was slow progress, but it was progress. The buildings are going to be beautiful, Sophia said, studying the architectural renderings. You're really good at this, Lena. Better than Daddy ever was. We're good at this. Hart Development is a team effort now. Does that team have room for a reformed screw-up who's trying to make amends? Lena looked at her sister, seeing genuine effort in every line of her face. What did you have in mind? I was thinking communications director, PR, community outreach, making sure people understand what we're building and why. Sophia smiled slightly. I'm good at talking to people, and I want to use that for something positive instead of destructive. You'd be reporting to the head of marketing. No special treatment because you're my sister. I wouldn't want special treatment, just a chance to prove I can be useful for something other than wrecking your life. Lena considered this, weighing risk against opportunity. Sophia had betrayed her catastrophically, but she'd also testified against Victor and was genuinely trying to change. People deserved second chances, especially family. Okay, you can start Monday, but Sophia, if you mess this up, I know, no third chances. I won't let you down. She walked away to talk to the community representatives, and Damien slipped his hand into Lena's. That was generous. That was strategic. She's good with people, and we need someone who can build community trust. Lena leaned into his warmth. Plus, she's family. Complicated, damaged family, but still family. Speaking of family, Damien sounded nervous, which was unusual enough to make Lena look up. Elena's been asking when you're coming to dinner. Actual family dinner with Nico and the household staff and whoever else you'd want to include? That sounds suspiciously domestic. It is domestic. Elena's decided you're part of the family now, and she's making her signature lasagna. He smiled. Fair warning, once Elena adopts you, there's no escape. You'll be getting care packages and unsolicited advice for the rest of your life. I think I can live with that. The dinner happened the following Sunday at Damien's estate, which no longer felt like a fortress, but more like the home it was supposed to be. Elena had gone all out, lasagna and garlic bread and salad, tiramisu for dessert, wine that probably cost more than Lena's first car. Nico was there with a date, a quiet woman who worked in city planning and looked at him like he hung the moon. Sophia came with Richard, both of them careful and uncertain, but trying. Even Morrison and Chang made an appearance. The lawyers relaxed in a way Lena had never seen them during business hours. It felt like family. Not the dysfunctional nightmare Lena had grown up with, but chosen family. People who'd fought beside her and stuck around after the battle was won. To new beginnings, Damien said, raising his glass. To justice, to partnership, and to building futures that actually matter. They drank to that, and Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Happy tears this time. Relief and gratitude, and the overwhelming sense that she'd finally found where she belonged. After dinner, Damien walked her out to the garden overlooking the bay. Stars were coming out, bright against Miami's light pollution, and the waves provided gentle soundtrack to what felt like a moment stolen from real life. I have something for you, Damien said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Lena's heart jumped. Damien, if that's what I think it is, relax. It's not a ring. We're going slow, remember? He opened the box to reveal a key. It's a key to the estate, so you can come and go whenever you want. Don't have to wait for me to let you in. Elena's been pestering me for weeks to give you one. Lena took the key, feeling the weight of what it represented. Trust, commitment, a future they were building deliberately instead of rushing into. Thank you. For this. For everything. For being patient while I figured out who I am. Have you figured it out? I'm getting there. I'm Lena Hart, CEO of a construction company I'm transforming into something ethical. I'm a woman who survived betrayal and came out stronger. I'm someone who values partnership over ownership, creation over destruction. She smiled. And I'm someone who's falling in love with Damien Crowe, if he's interested in hearing that. His kiss was answer enough, deep and certain and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Damien rested his forehead against hers. I'm very interested in hearing that, and in saying it back. I love you, Lena Hart. Your strength, your integrity, your refusal to stay broken when the world tried to break you. I love you too. Your loyalty, your determination, the way you protected me without trying to own me. They stood there under Miami stars, two people who'd been damaged by the same man and had chosen to heal together, and Lena felt something settle into place. This was what love was supposed to feel like, safe and challenging, comfortable and exciting, built on respect instead of control. The months that followed were a study in building rather than destroying. The affordable housing project progressed ahead of schedule. Nico's community outreach ensuring local buy-in at every stage. Hart development pivoted successfully to ethical development, landing contracts that valued sustainability over pure profit. Victor's trial concluded with a conviction that surprised no one. He'd served 15 years in federal prison, watching from behind bars as everything he'd built crumbled. His properties were sold to pay restitution, his business empire dismantled, his name becoming synonymous with corruption in a city that had tolerated him too long. Lena attended the sentencing but felt nothing watching him be led away in chains. He was irrelevant now, a chapter closed, no longer worthy of her anger or attention. Her father completed his testimony and retreated into quiet retirement, spending his days volunteering at a legal aid clinic and trying to make amends for decades of ethical shortcuts. He and Lena weren't close, probably never would be, but they'd achieved something like peace. Shared family dinners happened monthly, awkward but genuine, building new foundations on the ruins of what had been. Sophia thrived in her new role at Heart Development, her natural charisma redirected toward community engagement and public relations. She and Lena would never have the relationship they might have had without Victor's interference, but they'd built something new, professional respect that was slowly becoming actual sisterhood. And through it all, Lena and Damien built a partnership that was equal parts business and romance. They worked on projects together, pushed each other to be better, and created something neither could have built alone. A year after that December night on Cathedral steps, Lena stood at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the completed affordable housing development. 300 units, beautifully designed, priced for working families instead of investors. Community spaces, green areas, childcare facilities, everything they'd promised and more. The mayor was there, praising Heart Development's new direction. Community leaders thanked Crow Enterprises for investing in neighborhoods instead of just extracting from them. And families who'd been waiting for years for stable housing cried with relief as they received keys to their new homes. "We did this," Nico said, standing beside Lena. "Took Victor's evil and turned it into something good." "We did," Lena agreed, "and we're just getting started." Damien found her after the ceremony, pulled her into a quiet corner away from the celebrating crowds. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Should I be nervous?" "Probably." He smiled, pulled out a small box, and Lena's breath caught. "Before you panic, yes, this is what you think it is, but hear me out." He opened the box to reveal a ring, elegant, simple, a single diamond that caught the light and scattered it like hope. "I know we said slow. I know we're still figuring this out. But Lena, this past year has been the best of my life. Working with you, loving you, watching you transform everything you touch into something better." Damien's voice was steady, certain. "I don't want to rush you. I don't want to pressure you. But I want you to know that I'm all in. Completely, permanently, forever. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I want to marry you. Build a life together. Create more projects that matter. Grow old arguing about building codes and community impact." Lena felt tears streaming down her face, happy tears that she didn't bother wiping away. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm telling you I want to. The actual proposal can wait until you're ready, but I wanted you to have the ring now. Physical proof that I'm committed to this, to us, to whatever we're building together." Lena looked at the ring, at the man offering it, at the life they'd created from the ashes of the worst night of her life. A year ago, she'd been broken on Cathedral steps, convinced her life was over. Now she was standing in the middle of a community she'd helped create, surrounded by people whose lives were better because she'd refused to stay broken. "Ask me," she said. "What?" "Ask me now, properly. I'm ready." Damien's smile was incandescent. He dropped to one knee right there, not caring who might see, holding up the ring with hands that shook slightly. "Lena Hart, love of my life, partner in all things, woman who turned my revenge into redemption. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Lena said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and stood to kiss her while applause erupted from the ceremony attendees who'd noticed what was happening. Elena was crying, Nico was grinning, Sophia was shouting congratulations, and the whole community they'd built together was celebrating this moment. It was perfect. It was real. It was everything Lena had thought she'd lost that December night, and so much more. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony on the beach where Damien had first told her he loved her. No cathedral, no white dress that cost a fortune, no pretense or performance. Just Lena in a simple gown, Damien in a dark suit, and the people who actually mattered bearing witness. Elena cried through the entire ceremony. Nico served as best man and gave a toast about second chances and the family you choose. Sophia read a poem about forgiveness and new beginnings, her voice steady for once. Even Richard attended, sitting in the back row and looking older, but somehow more at peace. Morrison and Chang were there, of course, having become friends beyond their legal relationship. Community members from the affordable housing project came, bringing their children and their gratitude. It was less wedding than celebration, less formal ceremony than chosen family acknowledging what everyone already knew. The officiant asked if they had vows, and Lena and Damien had agreed to speak from the heart rather than scripted promises. "I promise to be your partner, not your possession," Lena said, voice clear and certain. To challenge you when you need it, support you when you ask, and love you through everything. I promise to build with you, not for you, creating a life we both choose every single day. I promise to protect you without controlling you, Damien said. To respect your strength even when you feel weak. To see you as you are, instead of who I want you to be. I promise to be worthy of your trust, to earn it daily, and to never take for granted the gift of loving you. They exchanged rings, his matching hers, symbols of equality and commitment. They kissed as the sun set over the ocean, and Lena thought about circles and completion, about how far she'd come from those cathedral steps. The reception was at Damien's estate, transformed by Elena into something magical. Lights in the trees, tables on the lawn, food that was generous instead of pretentious, dancing and laughter and joy that felt earned rather than performed. Late in the evening, after the cake was cut and the first dance completed, Lena found herself alone on the terrace overlooking the bay. The same terrace where she'd stood a year ago, uncertain and afraid, trying to figure out who she was in the wreckage of her old life. Damien joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Happy?" he asked. "Deliriously. You?" "More than I thought possible." He kissed her temple. "Thank you." "For what?" "For taking a chance on a man in a black suit who stopped on cathedral steps. For trusting me when you had every reason not to. For building this with me." Lena turned to face him, framing his face with her hands. "I should be thanking you. You saved me that night. We saved each other. That's how the best partnerships work." They stood there watching Miami sparkle below, two people who'd survived the worst and chosen to build something beautiful from the ruins. Tomorrow they'd fly to Tuscany for a honeymoon, to an old villa they'd bought together and were slowly restoring. Eventually they'd return to Miami, to Heart Development and Crow Enterprises and all the projects they had planned. But tonight was about celebration, about acknowledging how far they'd come and how much further they'd go together. Inside, the party continued. Elena was dancing with Nico, both of them laughing at something the date had said. Sophia was talking with community members, practicing the communication skills that were finally being used for good. Richard sat with Morrison and Chang, looking almost comfortable in this world his daughter had created. "We should get back," Damien said. "People will talk if the bride and groom disappear from their own wedding." "Let them talk. I spent too long caring what people thought." But they went back anyway, hand in hand, to celebrate with the family they'd chosen and the community they'd built. Lena danced with Nico, with her father, with community members who thanked her for creating homes that actually felt like home. She threw the bouquet and watched Sophia catch it with surprise and delight. As midnight approached and the party began to wind down, Lena stood at the center of it all, feeling something she'd never quite felt before. Complete. Not because of Damien, though loving him helped. Not because of professional success, though building something meaningful mattered, but because she'd taken the worst moment of her life and transformed it into the foundation for something better. She'd been betrayed on cathedral steps and rescued by a stranger who became her partner. She'd lost her money and her family's loyalty and her faith and love, then found all of it again in better forms. She'd faced down the man who tried to break her and emerged stronger, more capable, more herself than she'd ever been when her life followed someone else's script. The last guest departed around 1 a.m, leaving just Lena and Damien and Elena, who refused help cleaning up but accepted hugs and promises to visit from Tuscany. "You make him happy," Elena told Lena quietly. "I've known Damien since he was a boy, and I've never seen him like this. At peace. He makes me happy too, makes me feel valued instead of useful. That's love, dear, the real kind, not the performance kind." Elena patted her cheek. "Now go. Enjoy your wedding night. The mess will still be here tomorrow." They climbed the stairs to the bedroom Lena had stayed in that first night, the one with locks on the door that she'd needed then, but didn't need anymore. Damien helped her out of the wedding dress with gentle hands, and they made love like partners, equals, two people choosing each other with clear eyes and full hearts. Afterward, lying tangled together in sheets that smelled like jasmine and possibility, Damien traced circles on Lena's shoulder. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About marrying you, none. About the path that led here." Lena thought about Victor, about betrayal and cathedral steps, and all the pain she'd endured. "I wouldn't choose to go through it again." but I wouldn't trade where it brought me either. That's a good answer. I'm full of good answers these days. Turns out surviving trauma makes you wise. Or just too stubborn to stay broken. That too. They talked into the early morning about Tuscany and the villa restoration, about new projects Heart Development was considering, about whether they wanted children and what kind of parents they'd be. They planned and dreamed and built their future with words, laying foundations for a life that would be messy and complicated and absolutely real. As dawn began to paint the sky pink and gold, Lena felt sleep pulling at her. She nestled deeper into Damien's warmth, feeling safe in a way she'd never felt with Victor, loved in a way she'd never known was possible. "I love you," she murmured, already half asleep. "I love you too." Damien's voice was warm with contentment. "Sleep, Mrs. Crow. We have a whole lifetime ahead of us." Mrs. Crow. The name still felt new, but Lena liked the sound of it. Not because it defined her. She was still Lena Hart professionally, still the CEO who was transforming her father's company, but because it represented choice. She'd chosen Damien, chosen this life, chosen to build something better than what had been stolen from her. She drifted off thinking about cathedral steps and black Mercedes, about a stranger who'd offered his coat and changed everything, about revenge transformed into justice, and justice transformed into creation, about the girl who'd sat broken in a wedding dress and the woman she'd become. Somewhere in federal prison, Victor Torano was serving his sentence, forgotten by everyone who mattered. His empire was dust, his name was poison, and he'd lost everything he'd valued. But Lena had won, not by destroying him, though that had been necessary, but by refusing to let his betrayal define her. She'd taken the worst night of her life and used it as fuel to build something extraordinary. A company that valued ethics over profit. A community that had safe, beautiful homes. A partnership built on respect instead of control. A family chosen instead of endured. She'd won by becoming exactly who she was meant to be all along. Strong, capable, valued, and absolutely done being anyone's victim. And as Miami woke to another perfect day, Lena slept peacefully in her husband's arms, dreaming of Tuscany and vineyards, of projects yet to build and lives yet to change, of a future that was finally, completely, beautifully hers. The cathedral steps were 1,000 miles behind her now, and she was never, ever going back.